and welcome back to Transcending Ascension. Today is the luckiest day of my life so far, except my children's births. But today I am joined with my friend Stephen from BJ Cast as we welcome Sarah Elkhaldy onto Transcending Ascension. Thank you so much for being here, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure and an honor. And I could jump right in with questions. And I know our audience would love that. So I feel like it was a divine blessing, your last episode there with time and how you broke it down there and how it can expand our being. So I would love to dive in with that with you. But I want to give BJ Cast a chance to say hello first.
Hey guys, and thanks again for hopping on with us, Sarah. It was such a great time last time, and I'm sure this time is going to be just as good, if not better.
Oh yeah, I mean, I loved the conversation last time, so I'm ready to hop back in and build off of it.
Oh, good.
That's
I'm glad
awesome.
we were talking after your last episodes. It was literally like it was all there, like the expansions, the way you take the situations and make them bigger, like how we all know time and space isn't real. Yes. But what does this mean specifically for us? We know, like I already know, and I already teach my audience that you can connect with all yourselves. There is no past and future selves. Now, one thing I teach, I want you to clear up, and I don't mind being wrong. I teach that it's not linear. So depending on your karma level, your next life might be 1,000 years ago in what is our linear past. And you can follow your progression of a soul from the bottom to the top. Yes, but it's not linear. As you go through your progression, and this is the hypothetical, is one day we'll all be that Jesus. And that's why he was so powerful, is he's one of our end lives. So if you don't mind breaking down that concept, can we go back and forth in our own soul level linearity, like what our soul would see as linear? It bounces around.
Yeah, so I do my best to organize these things, but at the end of the day, what I have really come to is that I actually just need to do a mini documentary where it's just explaining this stuff. The non-dual community likes to gaslight everybody who's trying to give a comprehensive structure of something that's innately abstract. And because of that, I feel like I have that psychic block released now. I have let that go, and I'm just going to go full. Here's the maps of the universe. And if you just want to jump all straight to, oh, you're complicating it, then just don't watch. Just don't watch. So, but it does need a mini documentary because there's different truths at each density, and they're all playing together. So by the time we're here, we're like WTF.
I would agree.
Where I was kind of getting at, I was kind of like preparing.
It felt like that. It felt like that. Yes.
Spirit guide episode that I did about 3 weeks ago. I was saying like, well, by the time we're here, we're a culmination of different things. And so I really do feel like it's helpful, not just for it's mainly helpful for my audience, but it's also helpful for me to break these down into episodes and then just give a call back to something instead of trying to bite the whole dish at once and just go for an hour-long thing. And I appreciate lectures, even from past mystics and even present mystics that are able to do that. But I find that my audience can best comprehend and digest it through that ability to kind of like laser focus in on one aspect, kind of play it into a few other ones, but just laser focus in on one so that it's not spreading it thin. And so because of that, to answer your question now, it's, can you be reincarnated in a past life based off of the karmic, I believe you use frequency or a word similar.
Yeah, like how your progression, your frequency. Yes.
Yeah. So it depends on what your dominant vibration is. If your dominant vibration, let's say, is in the 5th density, which truth and reality, and therefore your light body, will be operating differently. And that's what I feel called most to start that off with, because you said karma, and that's how I translate what you're saying. I translate it into where your dominant vibration is. And so sometimes people even needs a funny word, but sometimes people even require pain or trauma to kind of anchor their consciousness into a bandwidth where they can actually be helpful, or else their dominant vibration is going to want to serve, but it won't know how to bridge that gap. So I'm just trying to enhance and illustrate just how important it is for a person to be able to understand that your dominant vibration equals the truth in a multiplicity that you operate from. So how that pertains to what you asked is, can somebody be located in a past from a present incarnation? Yeah, that would be based off of their karma being heavily located, heavily dialed into, I would say, the third, lower fourth density. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. You're still going to go with your frequency, because that's exactly how I see it. Like after we go, and that was a follow-up question. I don't want to be greedy. I'll ask this one, and then it's your turn, Stephen.
No worries, no
But,
worries, no worries.
in this passing, and I know you go with Rudolf Steiner, and that's kind of my main teacher at this point, but I always go between and try to incorporate it all because we're so very layered. But he speaks of the etheric body surviving with your physical body. Once it's gone, you're etherically still there, which holds the memories of like your organs and all that frequency interlay. And it kind of plays a game of going through your past life with the astral body until it almost is finished. And then that unfinished business we might have heard of is finally done. It vanishes away. The time span is different. And now you're just incorporated into the astral soul. And that is now, that's your ticket to where you're going to go next. Everything that's once downloaded, once it's gone through the full process, because the etheric body could even potentially clear some stuff up. It depends. But then that's where you're going to go. And is that true at all, what he teaches after, or is that not even quite it either? It's hard to get your head around like exactly what it looks like.
I like Steiner. I love him in some respects. I revere him in all respects. But Sarah's being called to expand beyond his paradigm, even though
I feel the stretch, like he's got a bit of it, but like there's more.
Yeah, it's funny because the paradox is I expand to return, because I started with fourth way, and I don't know where I'll end, so I can't say, and I'm going to end with fourth way, but I started with fourth way, and I resonate so strongly with fourth way. So all this mystic systems that I revere and I learn and I even blend together and I share in one form or another, in one facet or another, if I'm pulling from, I'm doing it because I feel that even if this isn't the whole truth, the whole enchilada, this is a very useful foundation. This is a very useful step. So what I always gauge things from isn't like, oh my God, like, what system should I choose to reshare?
No,
No.
it's like a building process of creating the way. Yeah.
What is useful? What is useful? Because something might not even be true, but it could be
Exactly.
useful.
Yes, that's so true too. Like you said, how it's abstract. Like I don't even think it's the same answer for every person when they die. I think it might even be different for every single person.
So what you can do the best is build, develop the eternal essence, the eternal essence, or what I call spiritual sovereignty. That's why I teach spiritual sovereignty. It's that has enough substance to go into, I don't want to say a purely subjective realm where it creates its own, but that will be able to go beyond what we're building and working on this life, which is, did Steiner was right, or for me, Gurdjieff, is the moon trapping us? Is the moon wiping our memories? I keep coming back.
That's an interesting one to come back to for sure.
Oh, it's like my twin flame. My twin flame is the moon wiping my memories. Everyone else has like a person. I'm like,
It plays into that moon matrix thing a lot of people talk about, with the reincarnation cycle, and you talked about it on your video with the false light, how that false light will pull us in, and these entities will disguise themselves. It's always a good thing to come back to. I mean, it's always very interesting to just kind of digest and break down, so
yeah. And there's a lot of validity to it. So as much as there's a lot of hype and misinformation and fear and what I call useful idiots, 80% of what's going on is actually they don't know that they're being used. It's useful idiots. It's actually very small strands, kind of like how a probiotic is concentrated. So you're getting concentrated amounts of something, but in a small enough space. That the concept of there being an actual plant or an actual, I don't know another word for plant, but that is so small compared to useful idiots. So that topic is ripe with a bunch of misinformation that can, what I think I consider human error, just organic misinformation about a very complex topic that has a lot of truth to it still, and so yeah. But to answer your question about like what goes on specifically, and especially pertaining to Steiner's paradigm, I like Steiner's paradigm because he is clearly preparing the energy field to receive something that was beyond the epochs and beyond the energies that were even present while he was tuning into them. So
yeah, he says that too.
Right. So because of that, he was correct in a sense. Now, does that need to be taken to the max? I feel like there's other strands or paradigms to pull from, but he even said that because of how objective he was. He knew that you have to perceive the truth from at least 12 paradigms. And that's as good as you're going to get for keeping yourself honest.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So he was basically concerned with preparing the energies for that which could survive past all of the distortions that are going on, but that we're piggybacking up into what we're now experiencing as an electric paradigm.
I like that.
Very interesting. Well, Sarah, I want to actually ask you about a few things, but we'll start off with this one first. So, of course, I've been checking out your new videos, but I actually saw a short you did that I wanted to ask you a question about. I didn't get a chance to see the whole entire video, but the short's name was "Hidden Power of Stepping into Your Truth." And what you described, so what you were describing in this short was how when we do this, when we take this power of stepping into our truth, being our authentic selves, evolving ourselves, whether spiritually in every different aspect or facet of this existence, there's a subconscious trigger mechanism in the people around us.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So I want to pick your brain on this because I did not get a chance to ask you the last time you were on my show. How do you feel about the Agent Smith effect? I know this is something that a lot of us who have chosen the spiritual evolution in our lives have dealt with. We've dealt with some flack by our loved ones, the people around us, especially in the experience we have where we start to shed these old habits, these old ways that no longer serve us on our spiritual evolution. So what do you think the Agent Smith effect is, and have you experienced it yourself on your own path?
Oh, absolutely. I experience it a lot, and they're meant to help clarify us. So I will go one step further and say the moment you start talking in a public sphere about these things where you're really public, like me, like you've got a large following, you get it from even other people who are spiritual. You get it from people now accusing you of, why do you have so much oh, the algorithms are pushing your stuff because you're this. So you get it from every angle. You get it from people who are spiritual but not doing the inner work to just go, wow, maybe I have jealousy, or wow, maybe I have my own blocks, or wow, maybe I should figure out. One of the biggest blocks I had, and I know this is a tangent, and I'm going to answer your question. I did not forget.
All good. I like it. No worries.
One of the biggest blocks I had was I didn't know how social media worked, and I had a large account only based off of the fact that I had friends in high places at that time who kept reposting me.
Okay.
Until I learned, I went on YouTube one day and I figured out that the world wasn't against me. I figured out that I was doing everything in a horribly wrong way. And once I fixed that, I didn't need anyone's help. I had my own organic thing. So My point is that it comes through your weaknesses. It comes through your fatal flaws. It comes through your jugulars. The Agent Smith effect goes for your most vulnerable spot. It's different than if you're expecting it to come from clear opposition. Clear opposition would be if you're in a political stance and you're loud about it, you're going to expect the opposition to that political stance. Now, is that really Agent Smith? No, that's not what I would call Agent Smith. I would call that like organic, like we had it coming, what we have an opinion, and we exist in the world. Or organic Agent Smith effect is when your reality warps around you for your fatal flaws. And so because of that, it's meant to clarify you. It's meant to almost as a rite of passage to clarify the mirror of where you came from, who you are, what your evolutionary trajectory will look like, make you more aware of what inside needs to either be reconciled, purified, released, embraced, all those different things. And so they're going to come in the form of not just family, but people mainly experience family. People won't experience the things that I first started this off at most of the time, but people will mainly experience it through family. Why? Because that's the Agent Smith's most easiest way to tap into them. But should they find themselves in a new paradigm because they rapidly made changes or shifted their dominant vibration, right? If you're familiar with Hawkins' map of consciousness.
Yes, I've heard of that before.
Yeah, his map of consciousness, for the viewers who may not be familiar with that map, another way I can relate it is spiral dynamics, where spiral dynamics has clear octaves of consciousness. Those octaves of consciousness are somebody's home vibration, meaning they're allowed to be pissed, they're allowed to be separated or tribal, but that they have a dominant home in the way that their consciousness comes from. And so it's in these levels of consciousness, or as I said, David Hawkins has the most popular version of a map. When a person has raised significantly their dominant vibration, they start seeing the world completely different. They might make rapid or they might make intense changes to their circumstances. The family might not be used as the Agent Smith so much anymore. They might have clarified themselves in that department to where it's like you either create harmony, like I did with my mom, like you either just create harmony, you just go, okay, you could be Catholic. Okay, I don't care. Okay, I love you. Okay, I don't have control over your journey. Okay, I love you and I'll look weird to you. I accept that. So you learn that unconditional love, but then it's like, all right, well, let's try this setting. So if you keep refining your level of consciousness and you keep changing your home dominant vibration, your home vibration, then what happens is the Agent Smith effect comes in new, different catalysts. And so it'll always come in the way I'm really setting this stage to be like, what will it be? How you will know it? You'll know it by it's coming after your fatal flaws and your jugular.
I think you described it very well. You know, I've heard that version of it before. I do think it is. It's almost like a clarification. It's almost like, because we are all subjective focal points of the divine, and how it does come for your jugular vein. It's almost as if the divine in some ways is giving you that message, that test. It almost helps you clarify yourself in order for you to move on to the next phase of your evolution. I definitely agree with that. I think that's awesome. One other thing I really wanted to ask you about, because this recent video you did blew me away, and then we'll hand it back to Diana. How to win your spiritual battle, being versus non-being. I got to just tell you that was very awesome. It was magnificent how you described everything there. I think a lot of us, when we first start on our spiritual evolution, we experience this and we don't know what to call it. And I think you hit the nail on the head in your video with that, because I remember in my young 20s, I'm sitting there and this is happening to me. And there was a couple of times where, I almost did go into that existential freeze, or that almost that, almost that nullification of the willpower. So one thing I wanted to ask you about that, because, when we're talking about the negative polarity of non-being, I think we see that still to some degree. And I know you call them the powers that were, and I agree with you. I still think there's what I will say manifestations of this polarity in our human collective sphere. And I guess, do you feel certain human energies in the collective consciousness are pushing forth this negative aspect of non-being? And the reason why I say that is I ask because if you look at what's known as common consensual information, like what a lot of people look for, I guess you could say, who aren't on their spiritual evolution, they look at this mainstream information. It almost kind of points us towards that direction of nihilism. It almost does in a lot of ways. So, I mean, do you feel that this is potentially some kind of pushed forth energy in our collective at this period of time? Because we see so many different aspects of it still kind of taking hold.
Yes, but Nietzsche had prophesized this. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
No, I'm familiar. Yeah, I'm familiar with Nietzsche. Yeah.
Nietzsche prophesized that we were headed into an age of nihilism, and perfectly kind of like summed up the tone, which is very interesting, because what I find useful, since I already defined what I mean by useful, what I find useful about his paradigm, what filter he was running this prophecy through, was linking it specifically to the apathy, to a lack of struggle, to what we would consider today to be wokeism. But in how he wasn't, foreseeing things in that light. He was foreseeing them more from the loss of will to play the game. So if me and Buddha and the Gnostic Yeshua and the likes want to ascend this reality, Nietzsche would have been, no, you fight this reality. If samsara is a meat grinder, well, then you become the grinder of the meat grinder. So he thought that the nihilism that we're experiencing and that we're rapidly headed towards today was basically the loss of will to the point of wanting to equalize everything so that there is no discomfort anymore. So long story short, he was linking nihilism with the lack of experiencing discomfort, the lack of struggle. And so is that the whole truth? I don't believe so, but I find that to be a very useful paradigm to be able to run through this impulse for nihilism, because how would that play out with what we're experiencing? Well, we're in an immediate we're in immediate, what's that word? Immediate gratitude? Or
instant gratification.
Okay, we're in instant gratification mode, but the things that produce that instant gratification aren't even gratifying. So he was basically, if I could be so bold as to interpret what he was saying, and he was basically saying instant gratification to such an extreme will lead to nihilism. That's one way of looking at it. Another way, if we run it through Steiner, he would say, oh, well, it's the lack of the Christ impulse. It's the lack of the ability of us to heed the call of this age, which is to essentially not just, he wouldn't say open the heart, but he'd say something along the lines of, it's the lack of the ability to really locate ourselves in where we are in time. And where we are in time, according to him, was we're on a bell curve out of the material realm. So when we're too stuck, when our consciousness is too attached to all the different egos, all the unresolved things inside our mind, body, spirit, then that would mean that we cannot answer the call. So we will naturally we won't be able to align with the life wave. We won't be able to continuously heal and continuously catch that creative wave called Christ into Ascension. So there's different ways to really look at the nihilism. I view it actually as being entirely appropriate. I view the nihilism as being appropriate. And the reason why is because nihilism isn't a bad guy. Nihilism is actually what people might mistake for the highest state of being, which is stillness. But when you don't know what's going on, you go, oh, what's the point? Oh, what's the thing? That is a massive choice point. Is the choice point to blame? No, the choice point is not to blame. What you do with that choice point can lead to more nihilism, which will then lead to more apathy, which will then lead to more lower consciousness and so forth. Or you can use that choice point to go, oh man, I get it. I get it. There's no more ego gratification. I woke up from the dream and now I'm depressed. Do I go blame nihilism for my stillness? No. You go and say, what's this saying? For me, that's why I've heard all the things, but my intuition, because I'm not here to repeat other people, I'm here to bridge them. I'm here to teach them so that then I could compare and contrast with my gnosis. I say some people truly, genuinely, not from resistance, not from avoidance, not from this or that, truly are meant to graduate this reality. It's grown out like a shoe. You just grow out of the shoe. It's not about, oh, I'm trying to grow my foot so that I could fit into that shoe. Your foot just grew out of the shoe.
I would agree wholeheartedly. And I like your perspective on the nihilism being a good thing. One last thing I'll add before we go to Diana. I just want to get your opinion on this. I feel what we're experiencing right now as a collective is we're being shown some of the, what I will say in the perceived fashion, some of the deepest, darkest aspects of this at this current time. You know, with the collective energies being the way they are right now, do you feel that this is actually a good thing as well? And the reason why I say this is because we as humans, as you were just saying, if we don't have struggle or we don't face any kind of adversity, at least when we're trying to manifest and be in this state of being, it can lead us back to that. But do you feel that this is going to help us even further as a collective in this unveiling that's occurring right now, and maybe potentially getting us up to a little bit more speed in the collective sense, I guess is what I'm saying?
Yeah, but we would need to admit that we're heavily addicts. We're addicts to the way things are. And that to proceed forward, we'd have to be an entirely different version of ourselves. And that entirely different version of ourselves would also be one that would, I don't want to say sacrifice, but would have to evolve into a way of being where there's always going to be challenges. There's a with every dimension, with every level of truth, with every whatever, there's always going to be the paint strokes, right? The paint strokes would be what I call karma and dharma. Karma and dharma. Some people call that contrast. There's always these different ways to paint the fact that there isn't 100% utopian perfect idealism within this universe because, well, if you ask me, because we're in light. Light will always have shadow because that's what light is. Light is defined by what is not. It is defined by shadow. So because of that, there's always going to be that. How does that play into this? Well, we would have to be like we're like light addicts. We would have to like be, I even was thinking about this. I was like, I like my creative stress. I'm happy for it. And then I thought, yeah, but your creative stress is dependent on a way of life and a way of being in a system where inevitably, even if you don't mean to and you don't want it to happen, you're enjoying yourself. You're having creative stress because of a system that is essentially making another person's stress not creative, making another person's stress so stressful that they will lose a marriage. And I don't mean anyone who I know. I'm saying that people, because the download came to me because I was thinking about how much people would like be together if finances weren't such like, you know, like a hard stressor, like the hierarchy of needs. So we're in a system where we'd have to give up basically our own whatever it is, like our own advantages. And I don't mean in a communistic way. I mean in a way where you're going through a spiritual detox to go into a healthier paradigm, you know, like beyond the polarization of any of these isms, beyond the polarization of capitalism or communism or any of those isms, is a new earth. And that new earth would not be based off of slavery. There'd still be challenges, there'd still be sovereignty, but that basically it would not be in the trenches of separation and so dependent on, well, one person loses in the system, meaning like they live paycheck to paycheck, if that, versus another person who's able to thrive in the system due to whatever it is. I don't know if that made sense.
It did. Okay.
No, that made perfect sense. I think you did a really good job at explaining that. And I agree with your perspective. I do think that there is no perfect utopia. There at least as of right now. I don't think the entire collective is ethically, morally, emotionally, and spiritually quite there yet. But I'm with you. It's stepping into a new state of being is truly what it is. And that even ties back to one of the my most favorite things you said on how true ascension is not us dissipating into this lofty realm, you know, but what it is, it's channeling, you know, the divine consciousness and your higher self into the current avatar. And I definitely do feel that's where it begins. Well, I'm going to hand it back over to Diana for sure. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. Perfect place to do it. And everything you guys just said, it's funny because I could clip that and it could be a documentary for my channel, because that's what I try to teach. And I'm trying to teach the alchemy of the human, human. Like, we are all bad, we are all evil. Like, when I started out, and I was never a bad, evil person, I was your standard issue, life sucks, wham. And I was raised an atheist. But then when I got into spirituality, I got into the all is mind, all is illusion, Maya, nothing matters. So I basically emotionally stayed in the same place. And it took that Christ consciousness learning. So I see why Rudolf Steiner would say that. It took that to heighten it up. I even briefly tried to be a Christian, if that was a thing. They're like, oh, is this no, it's not the answer. But they were trying to do the right thing, like purification, alchemization. And you brought that to light for me. Like, that is alchemy. Like, what Christ was trying to teach, that is alchemy. Like the Course in Miracles and the university I went to, this guy Paul Masters, if you've ever heard of him, he actually teaches this. He didn't get the success he deserves, I don't think. He's a teacher from the 60s, but he taught that Christ consciousness in a Neville Goddard way, where he taught spirituality, but from the words of Christ. And it's not like I stopped preaching Christ myself, but because that's so just ingrained inside of me that, like, you move on and you forget about it. But that is where all those stuck in nihilism need to go, to work through it. And then you can come back out and be birthed out again into spirituality. But now you can do magic and you know you're going to be good. You can do rituals and you know you're going to be good. You know your automatic impulse in the back of your mind might be selfish, but the thing you're going to do in real life is not going to be selfish. But at the same time, then you learn to advocate for yourself, because then you can go down a people-pleasing road. And now you said you did that yourself briefly, where you wanted to be Jesus and you went down that road before switching into higher gears. When you said, like, we all think we're Jesus. Remember you said in one of your videos where we all like, oop, I'm Jesus. It might've been a joke, but like, it's funny because I was through this.
The Messiah complex.
Yeah.
I had that for like a ceremony. I like didn't have. I've actually experienced people who are like that. That's where that came from.
Oh, like all the time. Like,
yeah,
they embody it. Like, or they think they are.
Like, I don't know. Like, when I have thought that in ceremony. Don't get me wrong. You know, you think that in ceremony sometimes.
I think we need to learn to think it, though. We need to find that place so we can learn to think from it, because I think it's the cure for the nihilism. It's the cure for the.
Oh yeah, no, I meant the Messiah complex. complex. No, the Messiah complex. I've had other people where they can't share the oneness, which is hilarious because they're in oneness and they're like, no, I'm the Messiah. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, it's like, yeah, like where we get into that, because that is that. I think that Christ consciousness space is the we are all one
Yes,
place.
totally.
It is this one and the same, the heart spark, the whatever you want to call it, and going through that human alchemy is the ultimate answer, and that's all we can do. And then what does that mean for the future, like you two were both saying? And we talked about this last time, but how do we take this and make this like a business, like not having slaves? Like today I saw a video of a donkey rolling down a hill, and my human reaction was to laugh. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was funny. And then I read the thing and it was like, we shouldn't use donkeys for slaves. This is terrible. And I was like, oh God, I'm evil. I just laughed, and it's advocating for donkeys. But then it's like, but then who carries it? A robot that's going to kill us later? Another human that you're underpaying? Humans that could also fall down the mountain? Like the answers in this human physical world are not clear, which is why my job begins and ends with just awakening the Christ within, because I can't think of anything else to do. Like besides like ending slave labor, like thumbs up. But like how do we do that? Like besides conscious shopping, it's too expensive for a lot of people, but that is the way. Thrift store shopping, like we talked this last time, but do you have any? I'm going to keep, if we ever talk again and again, because I feel like this is the place that's where the world changing is. This is where the world healing is. Like how you guys were saying, we're not going to get there this lifetime, but like, what could we realistically start implementing? Like, it's not a communist world. Like you guys said, it's not a communist world. But what is it? It's not this. It's not capitalism. It is getting into a heart-centered space. And then you could think, but honestly, when you're in that place, you're like, you could really, I've been there. You could hippie out, sit there in peace and love and not care about a thing. But then you have children and you want them to go to school and be normal. And then you're like, but now what? Like it's one or the other. How do we bring hippiness into real life functionality in an authentic way and just keep pushing forward like we're doing, but like more? Because you have like websites like Shen and Tamu that I even myself was using there for a minute thinking, oh, I'm not using Walmart. I'm ordering direct from the source because I'm thinking I'm ordering direct from China because that's all they're doing is ordering it from. But then it turned out they were using slaves too. And I'm like, oh, duh, I should have known. And it's like you get these systems that say they're fixing it, but they actually turned out to be much worse.
Yeah, Shane's actually the worst.
Yeah, I know that now.
Yeah, and then I was like, I'm going to start my own clothing line, and I don't want to start my own clothing line. So then I'm like, all right, well, once I get a bunch of money, I'll hire somebody I trust to start it for me who's passionate about it. And then I was like, yeah, but that's making you feel paralyzed will because you're not there yet. So I was like, okay. Don't think about it until you're there, because sometimes you could get overwhelmed.
That's what happens to me all the time. Yeah.
Even
I have so many things I need to do.
Yeah, so you have to like literally be present and go with the flow, or else you're overwhelmed by things that aren't happening. But yeah, like I shop on eBay for things that, and my logic, the way I rationalize buying these brands, not none of those, but like the brands is like, well, I'm buying it secondhand. And also
I thrift store. We have Value Village here.
Yeah, so that's even, but it's sad that we're in a reality where we have to even have logic to rationalize these
how
things.
We buy our clothes.
Yeah, and then don't even get me started on the microplastics. I could actually, I'm gonna actively stop myself from going off on that. I found some stuff out recently, and now my attention has all been directed there, like laser focus. I'm trying to think of how to detox microplastics. But anyways, so
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, forever chemicals, the list is endless.
Yeah. Okay. So to answer your question, the thing that I have seen, where I have always started with my purpose, my call, has been spiritual activism. And then it has now transformed into, I would say, spiritual activism, but more so spiritual ascension, because now I see it fully as a spiritual war. And I feel like it would be a damn shame if I continue treating it only from the level of spiritual activism, and that would not be the full potential of why my incarnation, like my why. So, but how it started off was always child trafficking.
Yeah.
Child trafficking. So I was even just pondering today about how it's rapidly shifted to teaching people about time, and how that's it has a story arc, but we won't go into it. But I feel like if I'm teaching people and connecting to a higher spiritual sovereignty that is at the root, at the very jugular of a system of spiritual slavery, then what will stop me from helping things along the way? My point is, if me for or if somebody's focused on the highest good of service, does that mean they have to stop helping the other levels of service? And I don't see that they have to stop. Wait, what was the question?
I would agree on that. No, I think you hit a very valid point, because I think a lot of us, I call it the many different layers of this awareness that we're going through, and it is, and more layers continue to reveal themselves over time. I think a lot
And
of us
there's like,
start
now
off,
what again every time?
yes,
Now what?
a lot
Now
of
what?
us start off
Everything's
in that.
evil. Now what?
That active, that exactly, a lot of them start off in that active, I myself, being the geopolitical thing and all of these stuff, like you were saying with the microplastics. And what I've noticed is, as we go through these different layers, I'm very Gnostic about it. I call the removal of the forgetting, as we continue to go through the removal of this forgetting that's on us. Yeah, I like it. I've kind of ditched the awakening term. I still use it, don't get me wrong, but nonetheless, I agree with you. I do think, because and I think you'll agree with this too, Sarah, there's a trickle down effect, as we are focusing on this highest intention, or what we are in this period of our highest intention of what we're trying to do. There is that trickle down effect, because one of the things that we see, or one of the things that I feel, is that we as a collective, we've been conditioned to think that everything is hyper complex. From our health to the systems we currently live in, many different things. But when we look at this from a simplistic nature, when we start to move through this, it does trickle down. It affects all of these other aspects. And all of these other things that we're trying to help along. I mean, would you feel that way yourself, and have you experienced that to a degree?
Yeah, because if I'm helping people understand these things, and people get weeded out, right, talking about high spiritual concepts, and I'm sure that happens to your guys' audience too, like you're as good as your last podcast. So if you have a podcast, or you're talking about something really high level, and it doesn't immediately help the person pay their bills, they will let you know how ungrounded they are. But actually, if you're talking about, how you said the forgetting,
Yeah, the forgetting.
or I forget how you I forget
No,
how you
no worries, no worries. So I was talking about how, like, like you said,
you don't use awakening, you use a new word, something about forgetting.
The
so
sake of
I
remembering or something?
I call the remembering. Yes, I call it the remembering. And it's because, and I'm sure you felt this way too, Sarah. We're a lot of this stuff we're remembering. It's already located within us, and I feel as we continue to move forth, and this remembering that we're undergoing as a collective. But as that's why I like remembering and forgetting. I think it fits. That's just my opinion. But as I was saying, now that you're focused on spiritual ascension, I mean, of course, like, what you're teaching is very pragmatic and practical to anybody's evolution. So I mean, have you experienced this, just because you're focusing on this and no longer on spiritual activism? Have you seen this trickle down effect, this energetic trickle down effect with this? Because I've noticed that since we're working towards the spiritual evolution, the spiritual nature, I mean, we're talking about stepping into a new way of being. And that has a trickle down effect to all aspects of this existence. Currently how we're, treating each other as humans. You even said it too. You're only as good as your last podcast and things like that. But
Yeah,
no, have
and
you experienced? Yeah, go ahead,
Okay, I
Diana.
want to piggyback on that, and you mentioned that we're in an electric awakening. Does that have something to do with it? With all the information we're putting out, is putting out like a sonic boom. And then continue.
Electrification of the whole atmosphere, from the satellites that we have putting us into a false matrix grid, to the electric cars. I don't know where you guys are located. I'm in California, and now they're trying to make it sound like it's progressive and it's super totalitarian, the way they're saying by this year this many things, and they're trying to market it as some sort of like, oh, and it's like, no, that actually sounds really 84, or it just sounds
1984. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds really like one of those things that don't mean anything, but that it's very like affirming, and to very quickly to say, that's why I call them the powers that were. It's almost like and my sister made me aware of the medical medium, and we were fascinated by how he talks, and I said, he's a powerful magician. He is a powerful magician. I'm glad he's here to do good, because he is a powerful magician. When you hear certain slogans, like what I just said about the electric cars, that is black magic. That is Orwellian. But also, when you hear me saying the powers that were, that's still magic, because I'm not saying that pretending they're not here. I am willing them out of my reality. I am saying the powers that were. So I'm aware that they still have.
It's twofold. Power.
Yeah. So it's, but anyway, so what you were saying is about the different notes, if you will, that we affect people on, and does it actually trickle down? Absolutely. And at a certain point, you're only going to be able to progress, whether it's one person out of 10 or 20 people out of 2,000. You're only as good as the frequency that you can carry at the highest. So if you're constantly reinforcing the base level of reality, or this or this or that, then you have nobody as the spiritual catalyst or as that oneness. You have no personal Jesus around you. So that not only trickles down, but actually a lot of people end up having their own awakening just by seeing that frequency. So I've had people book sessions with me, and it almost felt sometimes like confessional vibes, like in a confessional. And it's like, but how'd you know me? You saw some sort of energy of confession from somebody who you felt some sort of Holy Spirit or something from, and everyone has those. Everybody has some, but what they're doing by going to a specific person and by doing some sort of, oh, I was a bad person, like whatever it was, they're asking for pardon. Their soul is asking for some sort of pardon. And I'm not, like, obviously that what I just said could sound like vampiric power dynamics, but I'm not talking about it in that paradigm right now. I'm talking about it from the paradigm of us seeking bhakti, us seeking an external mirror of, oh, you're a potential of, you're a portal of oneness. You're a portal of Christ consciousness. And if you don't have portals of Christ consciousness, then you're all just recycling and things anyways. So spiritual ascension, spiritual sovereignty is the only thing that can even help the trickle down, even if it's not appreciated immediately. But what I have noticed is that it has woken people up of what I call toxic rites of passage. Because if somebody, whether a woman or a man, whether they come to me and they go, no, I wasn't that good. And so I go like, oh, you mean you mean you went through a toxic rite of passage?
I like that.
They did something happened where they were put through a toxic rite of passage, and they became what the rite of passage that they had somebody put them through became. So by the time they're coming to me, I'm not like, well, we all do bad things and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, so you poor thing, you went through a toxic rite of passage.
I like that. I always tell my people, you're just human and we're evil. but that's the human, that's the physical. Now you got to bring it up here.
You know what?
We're human and we're evil.
Okay, I love that. That's truly Gnostic.
It's you know, it's funny, but even like you were just saying, you know, that trickle down effect, and I want to know if you've actually caught wind and noticed this too, because I've just been kind of, you know, within the past year really starting to get a glimpse of this. I've kind of subdivided this remembering into two different aspects, and I want to pick your brain and your thoughts on this. So I talk about the conscious aspect, you know, the awareness aspect of it, those who are aware, those who are, you know, on the paths we're on of spiritual evolution. And, you know, I call us energetic pillars of light. And the reason why I feel this way is because people like us, you know, we might seem like we're just a few, but I know there's more of us and we're just spread out. We're grounding these higher frequencies into this existence at this point in time. But one thing I've been beginning to notice in the collective, have you noticed this shift in gears? I have seen so many people within the past year just start getting into things like, just out of the blue, like homesteading. Like being self-sustainable, like starting to meditate, like taking up yoga, like picking up Steiner books, like, and, you know, they might not, you know, be there, I guess, the word I'm looking for is they might not be in full awareness of it just yet. But what I've noticed is this permeating effect from this. And I'm just curious if you've kind of been witnessing this yourself in your day-to-day life. You're starting to see like these very interesting changes just start to manifest everywhere. It's almost as if this divine energy is starting to showcase itself in just very interesting ways. And I'm just curious on what your experience is with this and if you've witnessed this as well.
Well, I live in California, so no.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I know. I was gonna say, yeah, maybe not in California, but you know, you go around. I mean, you know, you talk to a lot of people. I'm just curious if
I live in an insulated spiritual bubble. So I have to go out of the bubble to go like, hey, what's going on? And then people tell me things. So in my reality, I experience people who are conscious. And if they're not conscious, I experience people that aren't hostile about their unconsciousness.
That's nice.
That's a good thing. Yeah, that's a plus.
Yeah, Canada's pretty atheist. Canada's pretty atheist. You're schizophrenic if you're not an atheist. Like, or they respect the old Christians, like that's allowed, but they're silly, you know. But other than that,
yeah, and you know, like when somebody says atheist, it's has the same effect on me if somebody says Christian. It's like define
they're not really practicing it. They're not
what strand of atheism or what strand of Christianity.
I like that.
Yeah. But I guess I hear what you're saying about that. Yeah. The atheists just don't make no sense. But so for my experience, people seek me out. Because they seek me out, that already narrows down. I see consciousness all the time. So in my personal timeline, I see a perpetual blossoming, a perpetual awakening. But in the general public, I have to actually kind of like ask some of my freelancers, be like, hey, like what's going on? Because I'm just not, I don't know what's going on. I can't know what's going on. And actually, I had a client today tell me, oh, congratulations. I went, thank you. I didn't know what she told me your latest live video, you mentioned the Nordics. And then less than a week later, the Mpox thing came out from the company Bulgarian Nordics. And I'm like, that's great that you told me that, because I would probably take another week and a half to have found that out. I just don't know those type of things anymore.
No, I don't watch the news. I didn't know that either.
I'm with you. I'm with you. No, definitely. I just was curious, and if your day-to-day experience, you were seeing this. I think it's really a great thing. I think, you know, in a lot of ways. I mean, this has always been my thoughts, and I'm curious about yours on this. I feel like in a lot of ways we've already won this, but we have to continue to go through this experience, in order for us to, refine and cultivate ourselves as well, but also because whoever or whatever's hands this is in at this current time has the entire collective of humanity in mind. It doesn't just have people like us. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that. I do think that in a way that there is something that has to play out in order for this alchemical process that's occurring right now for all of humanity.
Define all of humanity. You mean like all of humanity will ascend?
No, not all of humanity will ascend. I think we're undergoing right now I guess the best way I can describe it is a strange alchemical process. And how do I describe this process? Based on what we're experiencing right now.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Because I see what you're saying, and I think I know what you're saying. And what goes into your video you said the other day about how our future selves, like, we have decided we're going to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to win, and we're going to hold that in the future. But if I decided to go back and be a bad person again tomorrow and let it all drop, we might not be saved. And like how much people pick up the work of holding that in the future will determine how fast it goes. The more people we pick up adds the collective power behind it, allowing us to spiral up faster. The more people will be able to ascend because more help will be there to swift them up versus the alternative of them being left behind. And we just keep going up. And the more pick up the speed, the more pick up the knowledge, the more that like you yourself are like higher than us on that spiral with more bandwidth, more information, helping us pull up. And then as we pull up people that like understand even less. And then it's just constantly pulling each other up the whole way. But let's say you tomorrow decided to quit. The whole thing might fall. Or someone like Matthias DeStefano, another big name, decided to quit tomorrow. I'm done. And who knows? You know what I mean? The whole thing might fall. But right now, our current future selves have projected this, right? Like the constant energetic pulse we've created.
Well, I don't know Matthias's work, but I like something that he said recently because I saw it in a 60-second reel on my Instagram, my Explore page. And it was about the void. And I have been, the closest I came to teaching that was that video that you said earlier about the paralyzed will and how I was talking about stillness being the highest frequency. And I can't speak for his beliefs because I don't know his, but based off of that 60-second reel, I could have taken it out of context. I could have projected what I like onto it. But I'm glad he's saying that. I'm glad that somebody that large is saying that, because that could go really wrong. That could sound really cold. That could sound really nihilistic. That could sound really dark. That could sound really bleak. And it's not. It's actually where Buddha was located. That's why a lot of people think Buddha was an atheist. No, he was just so jhana. He was so jhana. When you're jhana, you're there. When you're bhakti, you're hot. You're hot because you're seeking. You're hot because it's magnetic. When you're jhana, it's cold. You're there. So because of that, that's almost kind of what else I was talking about with the addiction. The addiction is hot. The addiction is magnetic. When you go through a spiritual detoxing, it's cold. It feels empty, and it's emptiness, but it's not empty in a nihilistic way. It's empty in the stillness way. And so how that relates to all of this is we would need, as I said earlier, to go through a massive paradigm shift about what our rewards are, what our values are around us, into like genuine spiritual sovereignty. Because a lot of times people think that the domino effect of awakening or just the concept of ascension, they have a very like not in reality at all of what that is. And so it's almost like, and I don't mean this I don't mean this to tell those people in a bad way. It's just, it's a very selfish form. And I don't mean selfish like everyone has to come with us. I mean selfish in the way that you still keep your whole reality the same, but that like you went to like, I don't know, like a heaven realm with it. So it would be more I guess we could call it poet warrior. It would be one more of a person having a large enough heart space, the awakened heart space, the one like bodhicitta, like the Tibetan Buddhism, the awakened heart space. But also at the same time, the awakened heart space is the warrior. Why is the awakened heart space the warrior? Because the awakened heart space is going to navigate past a lot of the spiritual deceptions that are too hard for other people to really comprehend, to even get past. So they get recycled in it. And that's what Gurdjieff called the terror of the situation.
Mhm.
There's a terror of the situation. And it doesn't require you go, okay, I'm afraid, but there's a deep terror, and you got to get bodhicitta of to go past it, to go into that. And so what I see now is there being, for me at least, a strong focus on cultivating that wave. Where that goes from there, I'm not concerned with at the moment. That might change next month. I might be concerned heavily next month. I don't know. Right now, what I'm concerned with is preparing my audience to get to semi bandwidth range of that.
I can understand that concern for sure. I do think, one of the biggest hurdles a lot of people are facing right now in their spiritual evolution is sitting down and actually going in and doing the inner work and no longer bypassing. I think right now, one of the biggest things we could do, I'm sure you can agree with me on this, is to work on ourselves subjectively and at least try to create and manifest the existence that we want to see. So, one thing I want to ask you is, do you think that there could potentially be some kind of collective block to doing the internal work, or some kind of collective fear? Because one thing I've been noticing from a lot of people in the spiritual community, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this as well, is a lot of people are still kind of bypassing, and not going within and doing that deep and dirty work. And I'm just curious on your thoughts on that as well, because it seems to be something that I've just been running into a lot lately.
Yeah, I actually think that 2024 is the very first year of where we begin. And I don't even mean that in a bad way. That doesn't mean that the years before this year weren't vital. But energetically speaking, if we're just tapping into the awakening collective, because that's different from the whole collective, but the
Mhm.
awakening collective has been mainly through the mental awakening. And then Dark Nights of the Soul has led the awakening collective into the emotional or the body awakening. But with you, when you have so many moving parts, you're still grasping for concepts that are not yet integrated and not yet formed with intimacy. This is the first year where I see us now as a collective, like babes, being held up to a bright light and going, oh, this is what intimacy is. So this is actually the first year where I see us headed in the direction of genuinely starting to be the things that were said, or be the things that were known about. And so, and that, of course, people will still be experiencing, harsh catalysts or dark nights of the soul or shadow work, and be forced with inner work, or being forced with their own whatever they're avoiding or bypassing. But the overall tone is one where people now feel safe enough to be soft, safe enough to be intimate. And before, there was like a lot of energetic walls up while these concepts were still being spread. And there's just been a critical mass point reached. You see enough people fall on their sword, and whether you went, oh man, that was cringe, or whether you go, wow, that was so brave, like you saw that they survived. We saw as a collective that regardless of whatever the consequences were, they didn't end up in death or torture. So the
Exactly.
doom imprint was being healed enough to go, oh, okay, well, maybe I can be a little intimate or whatever. And that's happening not just at like a aggregate level for the social media. That's happening on all levels. I'm seeing that play out largely in social media that then switched the momentum. It changed the tide of energy into real life, where now people are being heavily impacted by what they've learned about being vulnerable or what they've learned about intimacy, and it's transferring over into real life, which is one of the most positive things that social media has ever done. So I see what you're saying, absolutely. And that will continue because, as Ram Dass said, as long as a person has a vulnerability, the universe will seek that out to burn it out. So that's going to happen regardless of whatever the person feels, whether they feel that, they don't need to do inner work, or whether they feel that they're beyond inner work, or they don't, or inner work's dark. Sometimes people think inner work's dark. So
well, it definitely is. I mean, it takes strength to, go deep within and open up that closet full of skeletons. And you might like look up and be like, holy crap, I didn't know it goes up this high. Like, oh my goodness. And so no, I think you explained it very well. I do think that this year is going to be some kind of interesting shift. I do think people are leading into being more vulnerable. So yeah, for sure. Diana, you want to take over?
Yeah. I have to watch, or I get too excited and I cut him off. I have to deep breath. No, I love that. And it just puts us like setting the stage, because I feel what you're saying about 2024. And a lot of things said that. So it's like, I am feeling it, but then you have to ask yourself, am I only feeling it because so many people said it? But then it's both, because the all is mind. And that's just the way it is. And we're in this place of healing and alchemizing. That's why I'm like, and it's a Sagittarius way to just be like blunt, like to get through to people that we're not as good as we try to make ourselves think. And then even when you first get into spirituality, you are shamed into so many different things. Like I once heard, and it feels true. And the last time I said it, I could watch the viewers just click off. But the certain child trafficking ring that's happening is because of the Victorian age of repression, and then just that continued repression that exists within humanity. You can't repress a human's evil. You need to just acknowledge it is. That's why like other people get into like, I've seen you with your sword thing, you got to get into physical practices to let that body hit someone. And you, Stephen, do the gym as well. So like that is how the human has to get out its evil. Otherwise it's going to build up and then just be repressed. And the repressions are what causes, or even our job. I was telling Stephen that I got a job in the people world at the beginning of the summer. And I was shown how like everybody is just in this like darkness layer, and everybody is so interested in showing you how good they are. And it doesn't matter, like we have natives that work there, we have atheists, we have Christians, we have a lot of Hindus, we have everybody. And funny enough, the Hindus are the only ones that are actually good people. And everybody else is just trying and showing, and it's just like this rat race to be a good person, but it doesn't equal anything. Nothing is happening. And this is where I get really blunt. Like I can't do this at that job, but my life coaching business where I really thrive, that's where I get in there and I go, no, how is this your fault? No, how is this your fault? No, how is this your fault? And like we can honor what the mother did and what the father did and how that hurt you and how that wounded you. But where are we now? And that's where like you guys why does the collective keep getting stuck? Why are they not admitting they're wrong? Because that ego. And then it goes into what you said earlier about addiction. And how do we sever that addiction? That's like the real thing right there. How do we sever that addiction? Because people pleasing, getting people to like us, that's endorphins. That's all endorphins. The cell phone, the clicks, the likes, endorphins. It's all endorphins. And our system is so thirsty for them. It's ridiculous. And it's like we talk about loosh and how other things eat our loosh. We too actually require our own amount of loosh. And we need to knowingly pick where we're going to pick that up. And like meditation helps, and it can keep you balanced, and staying balanced helps, detoxing helps. But there is something in the evolution where we need to invent that? Like, what would you say is the best outlet for us to alchemize that? I mean, besides talk therapy, personal therapy, journaling, working out, and getting that system to move on and getting people to realize they're human and that that's okay. Like, let the shame fly. You're human. And if you keep those negative thoughts built up, then the collective is going to collectively still have all these blocks. Like Carl Jung was trying to tell us that so much. Like, your demons are now other people's demons. And that works collectively. And this is why families can really be like connected unless you do lovingly let them go. And then it just never ends. And you're always getting stuck. So it's, how do we get unstuck? And there's lots of different ways. What would you say is your best thing that you found to get like unstuck?
And this is every day. This isn't like a one-time thing. By healing my fawn response. I've done 2 videos on the fawn response so far. One was the rise of the divine feminine, which what comes through. So I'm going to have to actually do another video on the divine feminine, because I realize and I'm aware that that video was supposed to be on the divine feminine, and it was really just about how she got so wounded in the first place. And I mean the feminine energy. So that's existing in men and women.
Yeah, you feel that. There's an energy.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get that crossed up. I mean, we have both aspects of masculine and feminine within us all. But yes,
and there's an anger at the feminine. Like, the collective is mad at the feminine. You feel that. That's why we're all mad at our mothers. We're the feminine.
Well, you know what's funny? It's that when I'm protecting the feminine, I'm actually not coming from the feminine. I'm actually coming from my divine masculine. So a lot of the times when you see men coming from thinking they're the divine masculine and they're shaming or blaming either masculine women or feminine women, my divine masculine, who I never got disconnected from, comes in and goes, the first thing a real masculine would do is say, oh my God, who hurt you? Not go, oh, look at how you're acting. You're wounded. Like, because let me tell you what the feminine energy wants. I know what the feminine energy wants. The feminine energy wants the masculine energy to comfort her. It doesn't want to fight it. It wants it, you know. And so also, I don't want to portray that also like it's just the masculine energy being the perpetrator, because that's not the full story.
No, like you said, it's the feminine. It's the feminine one that snaps up and go, oh, you suck. But that's a girl calling a girl bad, even if it's in a man. You know what I mean? Like, if you're looking at it, that's the girl fighting a girl. It's that in war with itself.
Totally. Like, there's actually a lot of toxic feminine energy when we're talking about the online form. We're talking about whether it's men or women, it's toxic feminine energy, which is the toxic feminine energy tries to just ruin a reputation. So they try to slander. That's like if we're just talking energetic, I'm not talking about biology or sex. Like, if we're talking energetic, that would be the way of the. So anyways, beyond that, what's happening is that the feminine energy has been suppressed in people. So what's the feminine energy suppressed in people? Well, that would come out as like magnetism. So magnetism would be wanting something. So it would be desire. So when it gets repressed, and it doesn't even need to be masculine, feminine, if the conscious mind represses the subconscious mind, then that will only drive that impulse stronger. So what you're happening now is, why is child trafficking the number one industry in the world? That is evil. That is beyond sickness. So how did it get there? Well, let me ask you, how does a person, I don't know where this is going, if I could say this. There's so many things I could say on my channel, but I'm like, I don't know if I will.
I allow you to say it on my channel. Go for it.
I'm streaming on Rumble, so you're good.
Oh, yeah, it's yours too.
You can say whatever you want.
And I'm not even saying this in a judgmental way. I'm saying this like a doctor or a surgeon. Let's get down to it. So we have to talk about things. And without the judgment, why is somebody attracted to a child? Just like surgically, just objectively. And that's the number one business. And now that's creating all these toxic rites of passage, where you have people being tricked, not only by men coyotes, but women coyotes, right? Because the women ones are easier to lure you in because you would trust a woman more than a man. All these different trickle out effects of invisible reality overlaid on top of ours. We don't even know what's going on half the time. And it's the largest industry in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a clear sign of what happens at a demonic degree when the impulse of the conscious mind represses to the impulse that now the subconscious mind, it doesn't go away. Now that's what's really interesting about this is I'm saying the conscious mind represses the impulse. So it's repressing an impulse. What is an impulse? Why does that impulse exist? And that impulse would start off as desire. It would start off as some sort of experience or what I would call a wish to know. So I come from I believe that really yes, there's hyperdimensional evil, but we don't need to get into that right now to kind of like just clarify and hone in on this.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to human evil, there's two. There's an active and there's a passive way. The passive way would be when we are portals of ignorance. So we inflict slavery onto others, we coerce others because we're ignorant of what's going on. And ignorance, as we know, isn't bliss. It creates evil in the world when we start doing the hands and the puppets of evil. So we become its vehicle. So there's that way.
Exactly.
But then the other way is when we repress our own impulse, our own wish to know, something that I would call innocent. Why, right? Like it doesn't start off as like, wow, like honestly, your mind is very traumatized and stunted. If now you are attracted, or it's not even attraction at that point. What happens is it's beyond attraction. Attraction is something where it's actually, whether you know it or not, even if it's karmic, it's something that's helping you become more whole. So this isn't something that's becoming more whole. And
Inner
we could
call to the inner child. We're ignoring our inner child.
It could be,
and then it turns disgustingly demonic because we're ignoring our child. We're told to grow up, be adults, be mature. That's just something that just came to me.
Oh, now that's true. So it's that, but also it's like beyond attraction. At now, it's almost like in the denial of the attraction trajectory. And now it's going, I like the way rampant, stark dominancy is. Because, right, what's more vulnerable? At that point, it's not even about like, oh, I like you. Like, no, that's like not there. Instead, it's this like raptor versus human. Like it's like this conduit that's starved. It's such a small channel of life force because the impulse was so heavily distorted and repressed.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. And we're creating it. That's what like we as a collective are creating it, and we as a collective can fix it simply with our mindsets. And we're going to almost have to at this point, because as we saw with that movie, and as we know with how the powers that were, they're not going to storm in and save the day on a large scale and end it tomorrow. We're going to need to do bigger things. Same thing with the fashion industry, because that's a huge slave market there. Your furniture is a huge slave market. All that quick made stuff, huge slave market. And it's getting bigger, not less. And why? Because we don't want to work. We've been told that working is bad. That's another thing I've seen. And I think that's the slave thing, is we've been told working is bad. So we get very lazy, and we are waiting for robots, and we order all this easy stuff because working is, and then it just creates a slave thing. And the slave master thing, and how I said earlier about with the boss and learning to stand up to the boss as a human to a human, that's something we need to work on. Like human to human, if you have a boss in a normal job, how do you talk to that boss like another human? Or, oh no, it's your boss. Like getting to talk to you is a great example of that, because you are like this huger channel, but we're all humans. We're all humans, and being able to talk to another human, regardless of position, is something I think will help us get over that slave master mentality. Like we're still playing at that timeline of slave master. Like I saw a meme just the other day of somebody like an old Egyptian bending down with the thing to give the king, and then they change it. It's the same humans, but it's a worker giving paperwork to the boss, and that's exactly how it is. Like it's it needs to be retooled, and humans need to go into it with more power. Like, how, you don't have a normal job. Have you even ever had a normal job? I know you want, like, have you ever had to do the thing where you had to say yes, boss?
Oh, I was never good at saying yes, boss.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us were.
No. See, yeah, I've had like 20 jobs.
And then she stopped hiring me for gigs. So yeah, I'm just bad at that. But I mean, I've had jobs before.
That's a good thing, though. We all need to be bad at that. We all need to be bad at that.
I think that like what was once total curses and ailments in my path have now just become the very defining features of my success. And so most people might not have either one, the resources to go back to any sort of place, but then on top of that, they might just go, well, I don't want to take that hard road because it's untraveled. And for me, I just, I was lucky enough to have family who lived in California. So because of that, I was just okay with being pathetic for a long time and highly dysfunctional and taking the shamanic initiation. I didn't know that that would lead towards high success, at least as what I gauge success, right? Because I'm not gauging it off of like Jennifer Aniston, or else I'm gauging it off of what Sarah thinks is success. I find myself highly successful if that's the case. So because of that, just the way that I'm cut from an interesting cloth, because I don't have the same reward value system as most. The existential weight of the situation always was my calling towards that. It wasn't more so than, hey,
Survival.
yeah. Basically, my value for survival was less. So that's what's going on. But beyond that, what was that point that you were pointing at before that?
Like, how do we get over the slave master? And for me, it was just learning I'm also a human, and learning they're a human, and seeing the mistakes they make. And it helps break that paradigm. I don't know if I've broken it forever, but with this situation, it gets broken. But the not having to work is so key. Like, working, if you can get away with not working, like I went and had children and then refused to go back to work, even though everybody was like, oh, when are you going back to I'm not. I'm going to raise my children. And that afforded me the chance to spiritually awaken. Like, fully. I was spiritual before that, but until you're able to sit down and meditate for multiple hours a day, until you don't have to go, yes, boss, until you get to sit with the self, sit with the pain, sit with it all, you're going to just be in survival mode going to work. And that can hold people back and like leave them just waiting. But a normal human, the only solution I've ever seen is communal living, like how they're starting to build that up, and how you can go live in a community for a while.
Yeah. And that will be how, if we're talking about the new earth trajectory, that will be the most optimal timeline for the new earth trajectory. I say new earth trajectory because there's other trajectories, but the new earth trajectory, that will be the most optimal, because the way that the system is created, it's not created for the sentience. It's not created for the energetic body. It's too much tension, too much pressure, always constantly on it, which is what I was saying earlier about how maybe these people like maybe a kid is experiencing their parents break up, and really what the thing was it was the stressors over finances.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of like saying that earlier about like the same system that, oh, I have creative stress is another person's reason why now their romantic connection is no longer. Why? Because Eros is above basic everything. And so because of that, it's so hard and stressful on the system, on the spiritual system of us, on our human sentience, that it's no longer, put it this way, the universe will help us because it's in a good way. The universe will help us because it's actually not condoning creative evolution. And when it's not condoning creative evolution, now the universe goes, oh, okay, well, here, let's help with that. So the very system that people are being poisoned by, for instance, right? Like you said one thing, and about that, right? Like you didn't want to go back to work. Yeah. Well, and then think of another thing very close to that. People who don't want to have to go back to work, right? After they have kids. And look at that chain reaction.
Mhm.
You have how kids are birthed. I will spare you. I'm sure you guys know too. You guys
They want to cut them all out. They want to cut them all out. They want to schedule right away. I
Mhm.
refused. I had all 3 of mine normally, and that is so rare. Just me and my sister were the only ones we know that had our kids naturally. All of our friends, everybody else with children, were in our 30s, all C-sections, every single one of them. That's something is wrong because it's easier for the doctor. They can schedule it in, and it's ultimately cheaper. And that's all they care about. And it's free in Canada too, so they
Mhm.
get to just boop, 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 done. It's
on
crazy.
breastfeeding. I could go into if a child doesn't get breastfed and breastfed until they don't want it anymore, that causes myofunctional and physiological and even musculoskeletal structures that are not optimal.
Mhm.
They're literally that causes a chain reaction to where their tongue can't fit their mouth because their jaw never got the suction cup of the breast. So it goes off. It's just like a giant cascade effect. And if you had to go back to work and you weren't being able to, one, do what you would normally or innately do, which is want to go into rest mode, parasympathetic mode, nurturing mode. And then from there, have your children be able to get the myofunctional, the spiritual, the energetic, the emotional, the musculoskeleton, all the different needs met. So it's a whole system change. And that's why I'm saying communal living is where the new earth timeline has the most optimal outcomes for that level of health that we would need to go into moving forward. And I say this as somebody who does not want to live in a community at all.
No, me either, but I think I'm gonna have to start one.
No, but I want to sow the seeds for that. Healthy people in the future can live in a community without me.
Yeah, I know. I've even looked at land and everything. I'm like, ugh, but it seems the only solution.
I totally understand that. I get it.
We got a bunch of introverts going, yeah, how do we help the extroverts?
I know. We have to, but I don't want to. Like, as I color my windows in so no one can see us. I love it.
Social battery immediately drained, right? It's like just the thought of it. It's like, ooh, I need to.
Yeah, I'm not a hi, good morning person. I'm like, don't talk to me till noon.
Gnostic Jesus Christ freaking introverts going like, how can we help these evil people?
I do really just want to save them, but it's like, but from a distance.
Oh man. No, I agree with you both. I do think that when we're talking about New Earth and stepping into this new state of being, it's going to be a radical shift. One thing I want to ask you, Sarah, since we're on the topic of this, is do you feel that a New Earth is going to coexist alongside Old Earth for the time being? What I do see right now, as much as I don't like to see it, but I guess as part of this process, I do see some sort of split occurring. And I do think that there's multiple different instances we can talk about. I do feel that New Earth will coexist alongside Old Earth for the time being. And whether or not we stay at least in this frequency while we are transitioning into New Earth, or it's something akin to the likes of this. I had a guest on my show the other day, and they were talking about, and I'm wondering if you've potentially experienced this too, on how it's almost as if they feel they're vibrating higher, that other people who don't notice them. And they were talking about an instance of when she was working with somebody, and that person was looking right at them, walking by them, and she was trying to get her attention, and she couldn't get her attention until she went up and actually was like, hey, ended up like shaking her a little bit, be like, hey, I need to ask you a question. She was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even see you there. So do you feel that in some ways that this is going to be a process where we have a old paradigm and a new paradigm existing alongside of each other, at least for the time being?
Yeah. It's okay. So I think that even the new paradigm, I think people are going to drop off. And that's fine. Not everyone, I feel like, needs to go the whole 9 yards, as I was saying, like the bodhicitta, that's the remixed version of bodhisattva
Mhm.
or starseed. And even starseed is a mixing pot of too many different paradigms, but really there's a core feature, there's a shared feature there of truth. And it's this ability to see past even the dimensions that are containing within it the things that we're excited about even going to and what have you, and withholding that ultimate union or withholding that higher union out of here to go, if I don't help bring these frequencies of creativity and expansion, um who else? Because God at the end of the day is being. It is being itself. It is not an entity. So if it's being, then what you have is logoses. You have, and so at that point it would be like representatives of helping those elevate their consciousness to save themselves, essentially. So I come from the school of thought that we can only save ourselves. And because of that, what I do is help teach spiritual sovereignty and discernment. That has nothing to do with disrespect for spiritual masters or for there being some sort of due process. I would have never learned from any of the people who I sought out to learn from if I went, oh, but you're not teaching me. So I have a lot of reverence and respect and objectivity to go, oh, okay, this person has more development in this area. I want to learn from them. Like you could play teacher and student and still not have that be oppressive. But the thing is at the end of the day, the divine spark in us is the thing that is meant to be blossomed. It is meant to be to where we become spiritually sovereign. So each person, we can help. I know this is going to sound evangelical now, but we can help save each other by awakening the savior within, which is what the Gnostic Christ is. That's exactly to the T what the Gnostic Christ is. So when I see large things happening, I don't see them the way that the current narratives of this age are. And I say that with no malice. There's whether it's the medieval time, like we bash the new age just for being in this age. What if we were in the Middle Ages? We'd be like, oh, you olden day age and your beliefs, like that's actually a sign of a psyche that is not located in the correct initiations for their age when they bash the new age. So anyways,
That makes sense, yeah.
in this age, there is narratives and they're popular and they get passed around. And this happens everywhere in every time period. In Thebes, that's what alchemy got brought to. Alchemy got brought into creation because Gnostics were hanging out with Hermetics and they were exchanging narratives that were popular in that time. So and then obviously the spiritual roots of alchemy come from even beyond Atlantis, but I'm just talking about how things get formed. One of the things, and I say this once again very objectively, is it gets passed around a lot. It's one of the common narratives in this age is that it's going to be kind of this thing that either happens automatically or happens through a ripple effect due to 100th monkey or morphic resonance field. And I'm down with that. Actually, at the end of the day, that's what I hope for, because what else can it be? I have to stay in unconditional love about the situation and know that I'm doing my best without seeking control. So because of that, I just rely on morphic resonance field. So there's validity to all of this. And at the same time, I do actually feel like there needs to be more spiritual essence, more creative sovereignty awakened, because right now what I see is us actually getting crystallized prematurely into the narratives before truly awakening the sovereignty.
I would agree with that.
100%.
And I think we see, as you were saying, I'm a huge believer in we can save ourselves as well. I think there's a lot of people, especially in our what I'll call conscious community, who are still kind of giving up their power two saviors and things like that. And I think this does play into the crystallization of, of these narratives within us. And the one thing I actually, while we're on this topic, I know it's a little off topic. I just want to bring it up because you brought up Gnostic Christ. And so I did a show on the Gnostic creation story in the Secret Book of John. And so the reason why I want to bring this up to you, because in the Gnostic creation story, Christ had Adam and Eve eat from the tree. Not the Christ energy itself had Adam and Eve eat from the tree, not Lucifer or Satan, as we're led to believe in the canonical version. So I've always wanted to get your opinion on that. I didn't get a chance to get your opinion on that the last episode. I mean, do you feel that this really puts together, I guess you can say, the aspect of Christ's consciousness and its purpose here in this existence to help catalyze us further into our evolution?
Yes, and it's funny because when you're in, remember how I was talking about spiral dynamics?
Mm-hmm.
There's different octaves of consciousness. They don't say Christ consciousness, but one of the octaves is clearly just Christ consciousness. And I have never been a person who has problems with the terms. I'm very fluid with language. So I have no resistance to Christ consciousness, but it's called different things. So there's always these defining core features of something that is clear of Christ. And so within that is multiple perspectives, kind of is obvious to us. But believe it or not, it's very, very, very difficult for lower levels of consciousness to see multiple perspectives. And it could be quite debilitating for a time. I don't know how much time for a person who's in oneness to really anchor in on, okay, I see multiple perspectives. I see cosmic perspectives. I see universal. I see beyond. But how can I hone this in knowing that I still am a subjective spark of the all? And so I set that up because with the creation story in the Apocryphon of John, I'm doing a video on this coming up of what the garden.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that.
Christians think that the garden was bad. But when you're Gnostic, you're like, hold on. You mean that we were in a trance state being fed off of? Oh, you're my savior for waking me up. So I'm like, oh yeah, that is for sure the Matrix, just ancient. That's the Matrix. That is no different than Morpheus or Trinity coming to unplug Neo from what he thought was reality. So, and I thought on the Secret Book, I could have, oh yeah, no, Sophia sent Christ. Okay, I thought it was Sophia, but anyway, yeah. So
it flips. There's stories where it's either of them. I've heard both.
Yeah, and then in one it's even Eve. So so Christ being the awakener, yes. And also I don't have an issue. Okay, I made that video on Lucifer and I want to revise it, but I won't. I'm just gonna let it go and move on with my life. But I don't feel like Lucifer is bad the way that Steiner put him in his paradigm and his system. And I say this with reverence and love, but Steiner appropriated everything. Steiner made Yahweh this Elohim that was simply just the Saturn space holder for creation, for his system of spirits. So because of that, he viewed even Yahweh as just the organizing principle within the Elohim. And Theosophy also viewed Elohim, and Kabbalah also viewed Elohim and Yahweh as being just organizing structures. And so I have reverence and respect for these systems, but I don't. To me, it's a very clear energetic signature of Yahweh. So because of that, Lucifer, when Lucifer is depicted as being the one who's awakening, I'm still not even against that because I view Lucifer to also be the energy of Christ, but kind of like the part of Christ's energy when you got to get really deviant about a situation. So when you get fanatical, so basically I view Christ energy and Lucifer energy as being different extensions of one another. So because of that, even in the stories where Lucifer's the one that wakes them up, I hear some mystics in this age and in past ages go, yeah, and Lucifer did that. And I'm like, hold on.
Mhm.
So you just mean Jesus on a bad day did that? What's wrong? So
No, I'm with you. And I do think, and I'm glad you've noticed that. I do feel that they are, in a lot of ways, two sides of a similar coin. And the reason why I say that is there's a reciprocal relationship I've noticed between the Christ energy and the Lucifer energy, and I'm with you. You know, I'm very non-dualistic about Lucifer. You know, the purpose of this energy and this concept. But I've noticed this because in a lot of common terms, it's almost like I was saying, this reciprocal relationship. Lucifer, in a lot of perspectives, is viewed as the tester, the challenger of humanity. And you know, it's interesting how through our tests and our challenge, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing either. Humanity needs to be challenged. Humanity needs to be tested because we would never grow and evolve. And you know, that's where we get that you know, canonical Christian concept where it's like, oh, we should have still be in the Garden of Eden. I'm like, so we should, you know, still be there in this trance state nonetheless. But I've noticed that, you know, through these tests and these challenges that we face in our everyday life, when we're talking about these symbolic aspects of both, this pushes us towards, you know, towards this Christ consciousness, towards this evolution. And I mean, you kind of even stated it in the beginning a little bit, how, you know, where people have this trauma, they go through this trauma, or, you know, they go through these, you know, these struggles that they face in their life, and it kind of helps them ground that spiritual aspect into themselves. So, you know, it is very interesting, you know, on how there is this reciprocal relationship. And I mean, do you feel essentially that they are two sides of the same coin is what I'm getting at. And I think that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow just yet, but it's something I've been entertaining as of late.
yeah, and a lot of the features that you had assigned to Lucifer are more assigned, and that's fine because you probably have your reasons for that. And it is at one point tomato tomato, but are assigned to Satan.
Okay.
And Hasatan was the adversary, and then we kind of and Satanism, the name, the name and the energies that work through that name, they can have them. I'm not here to redeem that name at all. I don't care about it at all. But that adversarial energy got taken to a whole nother level and got expressed and turned into this whole other agent. And because of that, what we're really seeing, and this brings me back to a few points ago. So I'm glad that I'm circling back now because I didn't really say my full thesis then. Is, are we hearing the side of the narcissist? Is this like the part in the movie where you find out that who the killer is and they were like the person next to you the whole time? And that's not because these adversarial agents are pure. It's simply because adversarial agent in one context could actually be positive, and adversarial agent in another context could absolutely be demonic. And they would both have challenges presented for alchemy, but still intent and where it's coming from is very important. So because of that, we can't just go, well, it's adversarial energy, so it's a part of creation. No, if it's coming from a demonic force, then, you know, a part of the discernment would be to at least understand where it's located. So because of that, there's this fine tuning of not defending adversarial agents simply because they are rebels rebels or agents of opposition, but at the same time, not demeaning them quickly because we're in some sort of program. And so what I ultimately think is that we are in a time loop. I believe we are in a time loop of spiritual slavery. And I know that that's very bleak, and other mystics might not have come up with that same concept, but because I'm not having conversations with them, they're dead. So I can't say that's what they meant. But at the same time, there's always been this deeply esoteric hint, hint, wink, wink at some terror of a situation. And because of that, I do find there being this need to pose any form of rebellion as evil and prideful. I think that that is an intentional program from a narcissistic system.
I would agree completely. And, I actually definitely agree with what you were saying, this spiritual slavery time loop. We touched on it briefly in our last episode, this sleight of hand, that we talked about. So I think it's very interesting how, when you're talking about these adversarial energies and using discernment, I think we need to be using discernment with a lot of these different energies at this point in time. Because as of now, I feel that, the spiritual testing ground, or as you call it, the spiritual warfare, it's heating up. It's heating up. And do you feel that in any way, shape, or form, there's a good way to decipher? Because I know a lot of people are still working on their discernment when it comes to this, because I feel personally, at least in my perspective, there's a lot of people who are just getting really attached to entities and working with entities in the spiritual community. So if you don't mind laying down, what's a really decent way to really understand if this is something that's beneficial to you, as opposed to something that could potentially, I guess, hinder you in some ways? Because I know that there are tricksters that can come out there and try and lead you different directions, if you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Also, Lucifer was a trickster.
Yep.
I'm a trickster. Gurdjieff was a trickster. Hermes is up for debate right now because I'm going through a little growth spurt with Hermes. But anyways, so
I'm curious about your growth spurt with Hermes. We can touch on that later, but I'm definitely curious about that one.
Yeah, I do come from the oversoul of Hermes, so it will only be friendly fire and healing. Whatever happens, it won't come from any form of and Hermes is it. It would only come from the oversoul wanting to heal itself. But yeah. So the interesting thing about all of this is that I've been trying to hold this certain bandwidth so that I could be comprehensible still for some academics, and I'm losing that. And I just have to accept that, and that's okay because I'm getting more fringe. I've always been, but now I just feel called to kind of go naked and not be so much hey, I'll be the middle point. I'll try to be more linguistically, appeasing. So the point is that there is what I feel like a lot of information that is going to sound super gnarly woo-woo, but it still needs to come out. And so one of the things is that the astral plane is creating crazy things. And it's because people aren't going into the light.
The Galactic Federation?
The Galactic Federation is interesting.
Yeah. There's lots of different versions of it too.
I'm with you guys on that.
But everybody's the expert in. Sorry.
Yeah. So because I work with Pleiadians and Arcturians, but
I believe they exist, but everybody's a personal conduit for them.
Yeah. So, but they even stopped showing themselves to me because of how sus I am of everything. So now they just connect through my heart center. They're okay, Sarah doesn't trust anything anymore. It's fine. I'm yeah, I trust you, but I don't see you anymore. But yeah, what's happening is they're not going into an organic form or a natural form of death. And that's causing a lot of crazy stuff in the astral, and that's affecting astral attachments here. And that's another reason, one more reason why addiction is even more one of the things that we have to look at as a spiritual dilemma and a spiritual addiction or detox. And I'm not talking about addiction in its most common form. I think you guys understand about it at
absolutely. We understand where you're coming from for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So because of that, the astral plane is really distorting even our reality, and it's causing this really chaotic thing. And the closest thing that I have to this in any form of system, but I don't even know if Steiner meant that, was he was talking about the eighth sphere. And that would be probably, oh no, there's another system too, Kabbalah's Qliphoth. I always pronounce that wrong, but
Oh, the Qliphoth? Yeah, they're demons, yes.
yeah, so basically our realm is, we need to heal. We need to just all be super transparent and all just be super like, we need to like be honest, like honesty, transparency, everything. Like a lot of times people give me feedback on my stuff, and if I had to sum it up in a really, brute way, I would say it's, you don't act spiritually enlightened enough. And it's funny because if a truly spiritually enlightened person were talking, and I'm not even going to try to defend myself on whether or not I am. What I'm telling you is that if there was one, the last thing they would care about is being some other person's fawn response version of enlightenment. So anyways, that is all ways that at a spiritual level, but there's way more than that, but that's all ways at a spiritual level that we distort. The ego distorts itself for some other form of fill in the blank, right? So there's always these forms of repression, right? That's at the finest level. What I just said was like the most refined level. Imagine for the level of where you're not dying naturally. Imagine how many distortions are at that level. And then how now you're going to some fourth density plane, which I've made a few videos on this year, and I'll make more on. I keep railing the fourth density. I just keep railing it.
I can understand why you do, and those are actually some of my favorite videos that you do, because I think it breaks down a lot of the symbolic concepts of, like you were even saying in the very first one you did with the expression of the divine in the fourth density. It's that wrathful, it's that, the biblical version of the masculine version, I guess you could say, of God. But continue. Yeah.
So yeah, imagine how a person, by the time they reach a certain age, now all these things that ought to be exotic are normalized. We've normalized pathology like dementia, Alzheimer's, and then we say it's because of this singular thing. And I've heard so many paradigms of it being singular. Oh, it's actually because of these folded protons that are due to epigenetics. That's one singular thing. Oh, it's actually due to this. They all are like this harmonic paradigm of isolation where none of the parts actually talk to each other or are aware of the whole. They're all just fragments. But the funny thing is that is what's causing at a hyperdimensional level this third density, fourth density blending, these blendings. And so what we're seeing now is a lot of possession. And frankly, I think even if what I just said right now wasn't actually going on, we're still in an experience where we start off all in possession, and then we have to play Houdini and do the inner work and the awareness work. Or if we don't like if we don't like the illustration of Houdini, we all start off as Neo, and we have to wake up and see the light and deprogram ourselves. But either way, I'm not somebody who's like, oh, poor humans. You poor humans are so innocent. No, I think we all start off at a baseline of possession. And from there, we must go through an alchemical process that is always there. It's always in the backdrop of everyone. There's always an initiation there. But even though we have that innateness within this third density, like that's where we go. We go here for the harshest challenges, the strongest pull of amnesia. There's also this added dilemma that I don't know, sleight of hand. It all comes back to how much bad did we sign up for? How much bad? And how much is sleight of hand? Because I'm leaning more towards like sleight of hand right now. And my higher intuition says lean towards it because it's useful.
Absolutely. It does seem like there is some kind of sleight of hand. And I think, what was it? We agreed to this, but then something took advantage of it. I think that was the best way that you put it. And I resonate with that because, there's a lot of things that we look at and a lot of things that we experience, that are truly just very interesting. And we'll just put it that way. But, why exactly are you leaning towards it being a sleight of hand, if you don't mind me asking? Is it just an innate feeling that resonates with you, or is this something that you've experienced on a subjective level?
Why would the Matrix go through so much work to constantly gaslight me from what is so innately intuitive to me? Is one thing, but also there's different levels, there's different dimensions, as you guys know, and with that there's different truths. And so let's say an ascended master sees perfection everywhere. That actually is something I've had to pull myself out of, because when you help, you now have to be useful. So you can hold the ascended master perspective. And I mean ascended master in the sense of there's an aspect of you, the spiritual master, who has already ascended. And that plays into kind of how you were talking about earlier, about how you have them everywhere. You already are Jesus in one of those things. So you have the ascended master within you. Now, when you activate the ascended master to such a degree, what ends up happening is you see the perfection in everything. And that makes you not take action. And it's not bad, because now you're tempering. You have temperance. You're supposed to learn temperance.
That is such, keep going. I was going to say, I could real life say this as a mother, being in that place after a deep meditation and be like, oh, I'm Zen. And then the kids are crying at me. The literal children are crying at me. And I'm like, I honor your pain. That's so sad. They're all Zen. And then I'll literally have to give myself a shake and be like, oh, I'm the mother. I got to go do this. I got to snap out and get back into human mode and take care of the children, because I can be that. Everything is so perfect. I honor your crying. That like, I literally need to come back into a bit of the ego self to function in regular human society. It's necessary.
So here's the thing. If we can hold the perspective that the ascended master within us is already transcended, they already see the perfection. One, that helps our quality of life, because our quality of life isn't stuck in the dominant vibration of the lower centers, where I have to control, I have to this or this, that. Now, instead, we go, okay, we're an ecosystem, and I could find where I thrive and I specialize and lean on the other ones that have passion and have a calling towards these other places. And we can form a system rather than I have to constantly control, like, for instance, the other day, somebody was saying something online about this thing I really didn't agree with. And I was like, I would have to exert so much energy to go back to like basics and be like, okay, first of all, where would they need to start? They'd probably need to start with JFK. Okay. And then from JFK, like they'd have to go to this event being an inside job. And so then I just looked at that and I went, yeah, the universe is going to bring them the proper catalysts, but that's not me. My energy needs to be conserved, but someone needs to go fight with them or educate them or whatever. And so the ascended master sees that we all are learning. We're all becoming. We are all being, and we are all becoming at the same time, because it can handle paradox. It sees the divinity in all, but it also realizes that divinity is in different stages of growth. So you're going to see evil acting very undivine, but you still recognize it as also being the creator and also being divinity, but it's divinity in its most Saturnian form or unconscious form. So the ascended master understands that there's nothing but love to give, because love at that point, at that level, is the most important and powerful thing. It's the ability to say, you have the right to exist. You have the right to exist regardless of whatever. So that heart space, and that's so important. And to be able to hold that ascended master on top of the fact that we could possibly be in a mechanism where souls are being recycled and intentionally having spiritual amnesia faced within them, having organic and inorganic. Organic would be, like our own free will not being accessed, our own free will leading us to poor choices that, whether it's junk food or whether it's certain medicines or whether it's this or this or this, not healing, lack of awareness, that then create an unnatural death. But then on top of organic, because I'm calling that organic because those are a part of those are a part of having free will. If you have free will, then even choices like that are organic. But then on top of that, there being a sleight of hand that could still exist with the ascended master, but it would need to be more active. It's an active form of love. It's the one that goes, okay, at a higher level, there's temperance and other people are existing and growing, and the universe will give them what they need. And I can hold love. But at this level of reality now, there is a spiritual slavery. And that is asking for this form of love. And so what I have within my own journey come to is really back to this Gnostic theme, whether it's New Age Gnosticism, Neo-Gnosticism or not, but these core features of there being some sort of sleight of hand in this density going on. And that where I feel most called, where I feel my purpose is very clear at this moment now more than ever before. Before it was like, I want to help. I don't want people to suffer. I don't want children to suffer. I want to stop slavery. And it always just kept refining and refining. And now I feel like I'm at a point where I'm like, we got to stop the Nordics.
I feel the same way. I think it's about balance. It's that awareness and understanding. I mean, you were talking about that the default settings of this reality are actions versus our intentions. And I actually posted this quote. And I got to say, like, this was very amazing. Anything regarding the nature of reality that you do not become aware of can be used against you. And that's true facts. And I feel like, it's that balance. It's that balance between understanding that state of the ascended master. But it's also understanding that this is a very possible thing that we could be experiencing, this sleight of hand, this spiritual slavery. And in some ways, I don't know if you feel like that can combat each other a little bit, if you understand what I'm saying. But no, I do think that this is something that we have to expand upon. I mean, we have to kind of accept this possibility. The thing I see though with a lot of people though is sometimes they get caught up in the darkness of it. If you understand what I'm saying, I noticed I've seen a lot of people go through their phase with Gnosticism where it's been like almost this dark phase.
Yeah, it's pretty dark.
And they're like, oh, we're on this prison planet, and the demiurge has us captured, and or we're slaves to the demiurge, and I think finding that positive light in it, as you were saying, Sarah, is the right way to go.
You know what? There's just not enough sexy problems in creation, because it could have all been a different way. It could have been a sexy demiurge that was like keeping us. No, it had to be an evil one.
It had to be one with the lion head and the body of a snake. Like it had to be something like that, like that for sure. Well, while I got you on that topic, this was a really good video, number one, because I think it really cleared up some confusion, when it comes to what the universe and what the divine truly responds to. I mean, we see this as a constituent. I'm not bashing the New Age community, but we see this when it comes to trying to attract or trying to get into this reciprocative relationship with the universe, this reciprocative understanding. It's all intention and no action. And and as I joke about it, as like you can sit and look out the window and you could really put all your intention and you can really wish towards that. But unless there's any action involved, the universe is not going to reciprocate. I'm curious on how you learned this in your own personal journey. What kind of trial and error you experienced before you came up with this conclusion, because I think this is something a lot of people who are on their evolution still haven't really come, I guess you could say, are fully grasping it just yet.
It's very simple. I was on a balcony one day in my early 20s, and I was sitting there trying to will with my mind that the bars of the balcony would bend, and they didn't bend. So I went, oh, okay. Well, then I guess there's some sort of objective reality that now I have to interact and learn about. Other people are still trying to make the balcony bars bend. So maybe I'll vibrate so high one day that the bars will bend. But in the meantime, the way that this reality works is reflected just like a fractal in our anatomy. We have feet for a reason. We have hands for a reason. So if we were purely telepathic, then we would not have the appendages or the vehicle that were necessary for this time space. So what I do like, and by the way, I'm sorry earlier about the New Age comment. If you use that term, bash away.
No. Real quick. I mean, no, it's not that I bash. I think they can be a little overzealous at times. That's a nice way of putting it.
That's just humanity, though. I see that in all of humanity. It just doesn't matter where you go. They like to click up, pick a bad guy, and boo that bad guy because it bonds them together. It's just humanity 101. Base level, like you were saying before, how they can't hold multiple perspectives. Well, when you can't hold multiple perspectives, you need a good guy and a bad guy. And here's my life story. And away they go with it, because that's where they feel comfortable, because it's built into our DNA. It takes that's getting in the uncomfortable to stretch out into seeing multiple bad guys, multiple good guys. I'm the one who's actually in charge, and the whole plethora of what we got to do to win at this.
Totally. That reminds me, I got attacked by I considered it friendly fire, but I got attacked by this person in the same network as me.
That happens.
Because if you have crystals in the back of your set, I've almost thought, like, should I change the crystals? And not because I get attacked or not. I can handle the attacks. It's not because of that. It's because, like, oh, is this turning off a larger academic audience that I have crystals in the back? So, because this one mirror I got from a person in the same natural law network as me was that I was New Age simply because of my crystals. So when I'm talking about, and also child wounds, child wounds will make you want to leverage another person's following and try to boost yourself. So it was more than just the crystals. But the point being is that really wounded people are also in the conscious community, bashing the New Age. And that's more so the dichotomy that I was talking about. The New Age deserves to be bashed. I would like bash away. I was more talking about how a lot of people are getting their own demons fed by exerting the pressure and the spotlight on the New Age.
It's like hollow woo-wooism is more what like an accurate term. Like that hollow woo-woo, I've got crystals, I do astrology, I'm so spiritual. The truth is like you can keep going and bring the crystals, because when you understand base science and sacred geometry and colors as frequency and how universe is frequency and we're a prism and that's the rainbow and blah, 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 crystals are obvious. So anyone saying that's New Age, you could say, you don't understand science.
They're made of microtubules, facts. Microtubules are crystals. I spent 48 hours researching that.
I love this. Microtubules?
Microtubules.
Tubules. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, if you look at microtubules.
And is that how they form in their
like crystals? So I was like, no. Before you say that, you have to make sure you're correct about this. So I spent 48 hours and I was like, oh my God, microtubules are crystals.
I gotta look into that. I've looked on the building bases of them off sacred geometry and I gotta look that up.
But also, like, if I see somebody, I guess this is just the multiple perspectives again. If I see somebody and they're not doing exactly what I'm doing, I don't go like, oh, that's false.
Yeah.
I go like, oh, they might have this one purpose in a mandala in an ecosystem, and it
We're
might
meant to
not be
see differently.
it's a very low level of consciousness just dressed up in the conscious community that sees somebody and sees whatever they're doing not exactly the same that they're doing. So then there's no value. There's no value. When I have more value because I'm able to relate to a larger audience than just congratulate people who now I know aren't even as conscious as they proclaim to be because of the lack of multiple
Getting
perspectives.
jealous. Like I feel like that's got to stick with a lot of people, and not to call like there's spiritual accounts I've watched that have been like 200,000 followers the whole time I've been spiritual. And you have jumped 100,000 in like a couple months, and then another couple 100,000 in another couple months. Like you've jumped 200,000 followers in less than a year. That's going to have like the big league people just going, oh well, she's got to be cheating somehow, because they just can't understand. Like maybe I should also listen to her. Maybe she has something of value to bring. If the collective is coming on board that fast, that like maybe there's a reason, because you're on the pulse of what we really need to hear right now. And it's not just because there's a lot of people that recycle information over and over and over again, the same teachings, where you're never like that. You're like, give it all, spit it out how this will help.
Well, one thing I want to add real quick, just as what Sarah was saying, and this is something I like to use a lot when I see people do this, when somebody's doing something different, or it's not the exact path. I'm sure Sarah will appreciate this. So I actually learned this from a very old yogi, and he said to me, Stephen, do you want to know why the crown chakra has thousands upon thousands of lotus petals? And I looked at him and I said, why? He goes, because there are thousands upon thousands, and I'm sure probably more, ways to connect with the divine and go about this spiritual evolution. So that's my response to those people who are getting jealous because somebody's not doing something the way that they are.
Well, it's also very bad for a person's soul, because they might have some sort of level of awareness about maybe the toxicities or the evil forces at play on some level, like how anyone would just have epiphany. Anyone could regurgitate anything that they don't fully embody. But on top of that, there's this it's bad for the spirit, because now what's happening is the body, mind, spirit is not being able to access more of their denied will. And the emotional body, aka the willpower, aka what I was talking about earlier about impulse, this innate impulse to know thyself. So we have this innate impulse to know thyself, and then when that gets judged so much, it goes down, right? But it only gets stronger. So it goes down, and then it gets judged and denied and repressed enough, and then now it actually has starvation as a conduit, and now it's attracted to things that are evil. So even with this whole thing, it's actually horrible for the spirit to be in that state of consciousness. It's you're supposed to grow, you're supposed to expand. And if you don't go of whatever system you want to use, Christ consciousness, if you don't go with the life wave, if you can't embody or awaken the heart center, if you can't ascend to the dominant vibration of seeing multiple perspectives, or AKA oneness. I could say this 20 different ways, but if you can't do that, then you're just in an ego now that's producing false alchemy. It's black alchemy of the spirit. So it's just another way of that happening. But yeah, I didn't actually, I apologize. We were talking about stuff. I only meant to show that as an example, because what I find is that when I see in myself something where I'm like looking at it in a way where it's like, it's almost like I'm viewing things now from a level of like, all right, you need some more groundedness. You need some more, because I go into Ascended Master a lot, where I go, well, that person needs to heal, and that's the best way that they're healing, whatever the situation is. I look at things very heart-centered, where I go, that's the best they can access right now for what they consider healing. And that's sad to me. And so a lot of the times I'm not even in opinion. I'm looking just as the soul, and what's the soul doing to either heal, grow, or not. So because of that, I've had to kind of like dial back into like not move past Ascended Master, but kind of like come back into the terror of the situation, which is the thing to the active form, the Christ consciousness of awakening. And it's like, well, how can you awaken when you yourself are in amnesia? But that is always the human folly. Our human folly is that we think omnipresence or bust, determinism or bust. If like everything written or bust, and that's not realistic. That's not what is ever required. You can be sovereign, and that does not mean you know everything. You can be sovereign and go, I can take it from here, right? That just means you still are guided. That means you still have a higher team. You still have your spirit team. You can still learn things from other people. You can whatever, but that you're the one. You have now awakened enough of yourself, enough of you, the degree to where you can navigate infinity. I call sovereignty. My definition is you yourself, your I am presence is awakened enough to navigate infinity.
I think
I like that. I like that.
That's a great way to put that. That's a great way to put that. And I think what we're really starting to see now is, you know, this flourishing of what I would call this true alchemy starting to emerge, you know, within the conscious community. And I like how you broke that down. I think that needed to be said. I think that needed to be heard because, you know, I think a lot of people, you know, still kind of just scratch that surface level, just kind of how, you know, Diana was talking about it. You know, oh, I got the crystals. I've got the, you know, I'm doing yoga on a mountaintop every morning, things like that. And I think the good thing we can take away from that is, you know, we do have people here who are truly being energetic light posts and really trying to help facilitate this, in the best possible timeline and the best possible outcome.
Yeah. And that definitely is a dance. It's a dance because sometimes I go, you know, I'm just going to do my super Gnostic high priestess thing. And if the audience, if the audience, let's say like a large chunk of them just goes, no, but I'll just take from you the things that'll help me locate myself in my next progression. I don't care. I literally, I just want to I just want people not to suffer. I just want suffering to end, but I understand too that everything has, you know, its own progression and I'm just playing my part. I'm playing my part in that.
And that's so powerful too, because that's what the alchemy, when it's good, when you expand into the pain. So you're stretching like a muscle and it hurts and you're going through the darkness because it hurts versus just staying a normal human in the ego cycle and, oh, my life sucks. Oh, my life sucks. Oh, my life sucks. And it's just repeating and repeating and repeating, never changing, Groundhog's Day, forever sucking, versus expansion where you'll have a couple weeks of bliss and then you'll find more darkness as long as you keep looking for the darkness, or else you move up a little and then you stay there and then you're in the next perpetual cycle where you have to keep. And that's where your teachings really come into, because you say so many different, you touch on so many different avenues that it's rare where there's an episode that happens where I go, I knew all of that, I'm not expanded at all. Like there's going to be something where it's like, oh, I never saw it that way, I never thought of it that way. And even this concept I already knew is now expanded. This is why people should never freeze up and go, I know everything, because even within something, you know, there is much further depths into it. Like I believe the anthropic principle and everything that entails, yet do I fully comprehend it? No, my human brain would probably be bleeding out my ears if I could fully embody what that would really mean. And that's all. I like when you say increasing bandwidth, because that's what you do. That's what I hope to do. That's what I try to do. I think that's what BJ Cast is doing. And that's just all we can really do. And I want to honor your time as we're heading to a close here. I'm going to, and then I want you to get, because I don't want to overdo or over Sarah. Welcome.
No, real quick. I had two things I wanted to ask Sarah real quick, and then you can finish off, Diana. So actually, I'm going to give a shout out to somebody on X today. And you kind of just touched on it too, Diana, what you were talking about. So one of the things this individual was saying, Kristen Mustaine, I'm giving a shout out to you, is you know, a lot, you were saying this, we go through these periods, these cycles, Diana, where, you know, we'll be in this state of high frequency. We'll be in this quote unquote bliss state, but a lot of times it is cyclical. Like we will fall out of that, or we'll have like this kind of drop due to whatever circumstances or whatever growth or healing we're doing at the time. And one thing she brought up that I found really cool was how to consistently stay in this high frequency. And, you know, I think that could most certainly benefit us a lot. You know, there's some people who are better at doing than others, but, you know, I wanted to ask Sarah, you know, what are some of her tips and some of her methods for maintaining this? Because, you know, I know a lot of people in the community still kind of struggle with these cyclical ups and downs.
Okay. And I just accept that I never answer a question directly.
It's okay. No, we love that. We're completely fine with that. Yeah.
Okay, so they say that the masculine energy in mysticism is the ascending energy. Then why does my gnosis keep saying it's the feminine energy? And I keep seeing Blu-rays, and how that they ascend is actually by going into their feminine. They go so much into their feminine energy, man or woman. They go so much into it that that's what allows them to get past everything, almost like light as a feather, stiff as a board, but not light meaning light is feminine. I just mean that's how much limp they go. They go so much into tender. They go so much into tender that now they don't weigh anything. And that's how you ascend, right? So the mind is constantly trying to do that. And I love the mind. I love the mind so much, but the mind is even trying to control its loses. The mind is even trying to control anything that will make it go limp and meet itself. If I were in that situation, my mind wouldn't even go, how can I mental gymnastics this? I would not even think in that way. I would go, I'd be so much in the experience of it. I wouldn't be going, oh, now that maybe it's because I've been so rocked. I don't want to judge this concept. I was in it. And then I got so effing beat up by the universe that I went, I get it. I don't give an F anymore. And then that's when all my success came, because I needed to be the version of myself that wasn't in that layer of reality. Now I'm grateful now for my visual snow. I'm grateful now for my nervous system injury. I'm grateful now for all the things, because they brought me more into my humanity than this fake surrender stuff where we go, oh, well, only if I could turn this into a win story, or only if I could control that. No, if I am in deep pain, I go deeply into it. And I'm not even worried about some sort of narrative of like, well, this isn't high frequency. The highest frequency at all is going, you poor thing. I'm so sorry. It's present. The highest frequency is presence in the innate vulnerability of the human experience. How do you know we're so intentionally designed to be vulnerable? Did any of you guys invent going to the bathroom? I want to know the asshole who's like, yeah, and then they'll poop out of a butthole. No.
Good choice of words for them.
This is an intentionally humiliating experience, not for us to get away from it, to go so much into it that like maybe I'll turn something into a win story one day. But if I do, it will be because really I'm shadow banned. No, just kidding. It'll be to help people. It'll be because I got a heart calling that other people will be benefited from this. It won't ever be because I wanted people to see how they can hack the mind and always stay in that vibration. It'll literally be because at that point, somebody felt so isolated that then having this message would help them. But we come all this time from this fake surrender stuff because we're always trying to maintain a high vibration. And it's like, I get it. You want to feel okay even when things aren't okay. I don't blame anyone for that. I don't even don't even blame somebody for wanting that. I am that. I have oneness with that person because I don't want to be in that either. But we lose a lot of the ability for intimacy with ourselves when we're really overemphasized in finding peace and love in situations, because there is a way to stay in the higher vibrational state. And that is by actually just being so much inside the supportive, loving presence of it. It's not from going, okay, how can I stay loving? So it's not coming from the mind level. It's coming from the genuineness of like, wow, this was a hit. I imagine myself, this was actually an aspect of me. And I kept seeing her while I would go on nightly walks around my block. And the more I connected with her, the more I've just become more whole. And it was this aspect from a different time period who was emaciated in a cellar of some sort of like pirate ship or something like that. And I go in and I just hold her. And I hold her not as, oh, I'm better than her. I hold her as me, until we can look at the most pathetic, not the most divine, not the strongest, not the most powerful, the most pathetic parts of ourselves, and be present with that instead of mentally going, how can I be love all the time? Because I actually love where that question or that person said it from. What they did was say it from the genuineness of wanting that heart embodiment. I don't take that as, oh, look, everyone's always trying to hack the mind. I'm so sorry that I presented it that way at first, because there's nuances and the nuances are important. So we want that. But now the mind is the one that wants that. And the mind has to just surrender to have what it wants.
That's so true. I love that you said that. And it's funny because we talked about it a bunch, but I think it came from Rudolf Steiner. It's been a thing for a while, so I can't remember exactly, but I think it was him when he said, oh, how I suffer. Instead of giving it a mind story, instead of giving it anything, when you're in deep, deep pain, don't fake it. Just go, oh, how I suffer. And then same thing when you're in joy, because it keeps the balance. Oh, how joyful. Or, oh, I'm in joy. And that's just a simple thing right there. That was a bit of a mind hack for me. And it brought me immediately to that place, because I used to be toxically positive, where it's like, I must stay positive or the world will end. And like, I was very in that, where when I learned to just be like, I'm suffering, and let that pain, like that visceral pain, just, and like where your belly sinks and you just like, ugh, I feel so sad, but just let it, because you're going to get through it faster. If you keep going, it's fine. Like you were saying, the universe will keep messing you up. It wants you to be sad, and it's not evil. It's just the process of humanity. But you have to say, I suffer, and you have to feel the suffering for it to really work.
And it's how eventually you will ascend. Like I was talking about, the feminine one is the one that the blue rays use to ascend. And I know that that's perverting the mystical system, because the masculine is the one that's supposed to ascend. But I'm giving my gnosis, not, the reiterations. And I see that as going so much into the intimacy of something that it just becomes essence.
Oh, agreed. I see it as a spiral, like the DNA spiral, like the tree of life that I always wear. Like when you see it as a DNA just circling together, that's what I see, like the divine feminine, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and just doing it together. And you see the masculine more, it's the dominant force, so it gets the credit. But I see them doing it like together.
Yeah. And it's probably together because it's wholeness, the anthropos. And I'm probably just highlighting a very important component of it because it's useful.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes back to, is it useful?
Yes.
I'm with you on that. Real quick, Diana, you got a comment here from
I didn't check. Yes,
Transylvania. She states, and then we'll close out here with Sarah. I am going through a phase where I am not okay. Thank you for bringing us some light to a very dark situation. Still incredibly confused about the true nature of reality. So that was I can understand that, Transcel. But no fear. I'm kind of tapping off of what Diana and what Sarah were saying in response. I think a lot of it is like you were saying. I don't know if it's the way that I word it is the way that I choose it, and I wouldn't really call it bliss per se, but it's similar to what Diana's saying. Like I acknowledge that I'm suffering, and I acknowledge that at the deepest core, but I also just still decide to choose peace during that suffering.
True, because you could choose
And,
drama.
yeah, so you know, and you know, Sarah really brought up a good point. You know, how a lot of people try to find this high frequency or this love in these external scenarios, and truly it has to come from within. And you know, I guess one of my most favorite quotes that I'll lead out with on this is, you know, you have to find peace within the chaos. That at least to me is truly that way, or this perceived chaos that we experience is truly the way to stay grounded in that high frequency. And that's at least just my understanding of it. But if Sarah wants to elaborate or correct me a little bit, I am completely fine with that as well.
No, it's ascended master all the way. I find this, and I don't mean that the person is psychotic, but the quote from Joseph Campbell: the psychotic is in the same waters as the mystic, but the psychotic is drowning in the same waters that the mystic swims in delight. We all just had a 2-hour conversation saying, what's the nature of reality? But we were swimming. Then I hear a question basically saying, I'm drowning in the nature of reality. And it's like, join the club. Would you like some tea? So I understand that there's like harder parts of the journey. So what you're probably seeing when we're talking about it very casually is you're kind of seeing the fruits of going through the journey. And so I honor that there's harder parts of the journey because there's less knowing than other parts where there's more gnosis, but the gnosis is comfortable with the uncertainty aspect of it because it's so certain or in its knowing. And so I get that there's not that yet. And that's really what the distress is coming from. The distress is coming from, I don't understand the nature of reality, and I'm not at your guys' level of gnosis. But that goes through a story arc. And if you could allow yourself to be in the chaos of that darkness and allow it to be overwhelming in a way where you can support yourself through the overwhelm and really sink into the one who feels distress and overwhelm, then the one who feels distress and overwhelm will not feel so lonely. And they will feel like, maybe I don't have to know everything and I'm doing my best. But the more that they feel not supported, now an illustration would be like a mom who's supposed to breastfeed her child. And when she sees the child crying, instead of breastfeeding her, she starts crying too. So it's almost like the parts that feel distressed and overwhelmed need support. And the more that they feel like they're the ones that have to figure everything out or else they're damned or doomed, then they'll feel even more lack of gnosis. So if you just go into the inner child or go into the emotional body and tap in really to the part of the self that feels overwhelmed by this intriguing and strange artwork and doomed or distressed by it, and start just giving them the attention and love and presence of going, I'm so sorry, honey. I don't know what's going on either, but I'm here no matter what. If you start acting like a stage 5 clinger, they're going to feel a lot less overwhelmed. That's also some step that I give in my video, the cosmic role of the inner child. And that also has really, that cured these like existential anxiety I would wake up with continuously in the middle of the night. I just kept loving my inner child and saying, I'm never going to leave you. You are never, we are together for eternity. Say the most clingy stuff ever. 3 months later, it completely resolved. It completely integrated. And sometimes we can't even handle 3 months. This is a tangent now. Sometimes people go, I tried it and it didn't work. And I'm like, you tried it what? Like, you tried what? To heal the doom imprint in 5 minutes?
It doesn't work that way, man. No, it definitely takes work.
And they
But
have to listen. They have to listen because it's very subtle. The cues and the tips that come in, like for me and the things that came to me in my early 20s, that's why I say I was a bad person. I always go back to that time that I wasted. I was getting clues to work towards my own betterment because I was deeply depressed, but I had to work. I didn't have time to improve myself. Like I had so many tips and hints that came my way. And it wasn't until about 25, because you know that you finish maturing probably, but I started listening. And that was really the beginning of the true spiritual journey. And then you just listen one thing at a time. Next thing you know, that person is the person, and you're listening to an even higher person, and like you just keep going. But you have to listen to the little things, like sit down, like don't go to work today, like don't do what that person asked you to do even though they're crying, because they're another adult and you have to honor that child. Like you were saying, like that, I am here for you, because we have an adult self that wants to people please, but we also have a child that wants to sit there and just be love or have fun or color or do something silly that the adult can't rationalize, so they don't do it. And then they go, why am I depressed? Why am I depressed? Because you're ignoring a deeply vital part of yourself. You're not listening. And it's going to sound silly. You need to be okay with this is vulnerability when it comes in. Like you need to look silly, look stupid, dance in the street, never stop dancing, sing all the time, and get the stuff stirring up, and the ideas will get louder. And next thing you know, it'll be very clear and you'll be going.
Yeah. And the world wants us to be in our like hyper vigilant warrior aspect. And what if like, and that's necessary. And we should have that for the anthropos and for the integration and for the balance of our totality. But also it really wants us to not go into what you were saying. It wants us to not go into those aspects and go into the levity and and what I would consider the creative parts of that. And so I'm gonna actually have this isn't like to get that person to follow me on Instagram, but this actually came up, as it was said, as a collective asking. So I respond to collective askings, and I have an article for this collective asking. It's called Healing the Shock of Awakening. I'm going to have my social media manager turn that into a carousel, because this is actually a collective theme going on. It's that the way that reality was operating at, we thought we knew, and then it went like massively shift. And we're like, wait, you mean there's more than just what Steiner said or those YouTube videos? So now it's like there's a lot more contributing factors. And because of that, that's added like more overwhelm to the collective load of like the awakening collective. Not like in a bad way. I'm not saying that I actually don't have a value to assign to it. I don't view it as bad or good. So it just is. And so with that, there is more shock for many people, because they thought they knew one thing. They thought they had something to kind of hold on to. And then they're expanding at a level that their nervous system, or they're not receiving the upgrades to catch up with how they're expanding. And that goes into shock. So that's what I hear also in that question. I hear shock behind it.
Yeah. And the mental illness increase, it's like off the charts. Everybody, they're just popping them out like Tic Tacs, like all the Ciprolex and all that. Here you go, get better. Here you go, get better. I was one of them way back. That's one of the first things I started at, where I was like, whoa, there's a whole different way I could live as a different person. But we need to like not do that with medication, not just throw tablets at it that's going to temporarily fix it, because it is that we're accelerating very fast, and you can learn it's a good thing. Be happy about it. It means the world's going to suck less faster. It's just going to hurt more to get there. Like if you're training for a marathon, but you only gave yourself a week to practice versus years, like we're going, but now we need to really push it.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And I like how you keep calling yourself a bad person, and you keep saying evil, because, you know, like in the spiritual, no, it's refreshing. I'm serious, because in the spiritual community, there's usually like too much of a taboo around those things, because then it's either done in that way, or we're worried about repressing something if we call it bad and stuff. But sometimes it's just liberating actually to call things evil and bad.
Yeah, it like people need to realize being lazy and going poor me. Well, now you're being lazy and not doing something when you could have done something is just as bad, you know? Like they try to get us to see like the whole, not to forget the Holocaust, but when they said the Holocaust, it was like they all like, oh, it's this one bad guy. No, it was a bunch of people that sat around and allowed it to happen. Do you want to be that? No, I don't. like, and that's what we need to realize, because in 100 years from now, and you look back and you see, do you want to be one of the sheeple that did nothing? Or do you want to be one of the people, like I call pioneers, that maybe it sometimes seems like we're shooting in the dark and we're crazy, but one day they'll be like, thank God those people were there, because it kept things moving in that upward trajectory that you don't get to if you just sit there and go, everything is someone else's fault and I'm a victim. It just never ends then.
And that's why I see as a default setting of this reality, if you are not sovereign, there is some sort of evil that is being manifested through that. It's just innate. It's not even about like trying to like be righteous. There's just objectively, there's evil when a person is not in their sovereignty. And so that's why I've gauged, and that's why I've like tempered the ascended master with the Jesus Christ superstar in me, because I'm a Pisces rising. We got mystery illnesses and Jesus Christ vibes. Yeah, we just want to ascend everyone. So that's the temperance in there. The temperance for me is like, I have my mission, I have my goal, but also other people might still not be ready to leave the addiction of the amnesia of the lack of sovereignty. You just pick as many up as you can. It's more like a rescue mission. It's not like the whole
society pumps it out too.
I don't want to limit someone else's paradigm, but that's my paradigm.
Well, the one thing I wanted to add to that real quick, you know, how you were saying, you know, it is liberating sometimes to say something's evil, say something's bad. You know, I feel that that's the human experience that, you know, we're here to embrace. You know, one thing I see a lot in this community is this elitist mentality when it comes to, you know, the human experience. One of the biggest things I always hear a lot of the time, and I'm sure you've heard this as well, Sarah, is like, oh, I'm done being a human. I want to go back to the higher realms. I'm done being here. I'm rejecting my humanity. And, you know, one big thing that I talk about too is, you know, and I'm sure you can resonate with this as well, is, you know, keeping our lower centers balanced and in tune is just as important, you know, with working with the higher centers as well, you know. And so that's just something I've seen, you know. I think, you know, yes, we have to acknowledge and be aware of our experience, but, you know, I do also feel, and I'm sure you can potentially resonate with this as well, Sarah, we have to embrace it. We can't reject it as well.
We can't reject it, and it won't even help if we tried. But there is some sort of, I see this happen often. I could probably just spend my whole rest of my career just talking about this paradox and applying it, taking different input, but inputting it into this formula. And that is having there be some sort of truth in something that is being displayed or resulted in an imbalanced way, but there was still truth in there. Like, I have what I would consider a dream experience now. Dream meaning because I'm living my dharma, and maybe someone else won't value that as dream. They'll value something else. But for me, that's my dream. But I'm in a deeply shamanic path, and the shamanic path is do everything so that you're light as a feather for ascension, and it's a natural death process that will not lead you here. So because of that, I see myself in a lot of that, not where it's arrogant. Sometimes I want to share a funny meme, and, you know, holding space for so many people, for so many different groups of consciousness has made me kind of go, okay, you can't do that. And a lot of that's been productive, because now I've grown more. I've matured literally more because of that. But then sometimes it's like repressive, because I just want to like say something funny. But there's this one really funny meme, and it reminds me of what you're saying. And it's of E.T. and that little girl, and the little girl is holding a plant, and she's like, are you going to come back? And then E.T. says, hell no.
There's a few of those floating around, man. Those ones where the aliens are flying by, and they're like, what do you think of that? And they're like, well, no, they've got missiles aimed at each other. They're yelling at each other about what person in the sky is the correct person in the sky. All that. So no, definitely resonate with that for sure.
And, you know, like, there's just a few different things that have led me to kind of feel like I'm a culmination. I'm not just Sarah. I'm like I'm the progressive energy of a collective. And so I feel yeah. So I feel very much
I've said I'm a they. I feel like a they, and not in the way society says.
Yeah, I feel very much called towards liberating the spirit from the material realm, but not in a way where, oh, material realm's evil. It's more so like once you get to a certain level of liberation, you can choose something consciously. But I don't see that happening here. I see it happening very unconsciously, if not by like revoking of a free will, which is like spiritual slavery once again. So because of that, if it were more in alignment, back to sexy problems. If it was more in alignment, then that's cool. But then it's like, oh, okay, wait, there's like abuse of natural law or abuse of this and this and that. And that's where that comes from. So that's where I laugh from that. That can definitely take on a new age elitist vibes. But it's just because, you know, people should people better then.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that.
That is a perfect place to end. No.
Yes.
I have been exposed too much to what I consider at least a lot of like hate. And so because of that, I feel like even that was designed to kind of like go, okay, see, like, come on, just go out. And somebody else could call that wounding or trauma. But I do believe that there's many things in this experience that can hold both the paradox of it being divinely assisting as well as, you know, wounds work in that intermediary way. So
very true.
Nice.
Your strength comes from your weakness. It's true.
Well, all right. Well, you know, Sarah, thank you so much again for joining us again to sit down and chat with us. We really appreciate your time. And, you know, as per usual, I have nothing but great things to say. Keep up the great work. You're definitely an inspiration to me, and I know you're for sure an inspiration to Diana. And I look forward to see what other things you have in store for us in the future. I do love your fourth density videos because I do like bagging on the fourth density myself. So it's I'll be looking forward to that next one for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, we very appreciate it. And thank you so much. And I will let you close us out with whatever wisdom you want to leave the people with.
I just send everyone infinite love and gratitude, and may all hearts be opened and awakened.
Dig it, well, guys. Well, no, my bad. I was going to say, just sorry, real quick. I was going to say I have Sarah's YouTube and her Instagram on the bottom of the Rumble and the YouTube description. I also have Diana's X account and her YouTube channel on the bottom of the description in case any of my viewers would like to check you two out. But nonetheless, my bad. Sorry, did not mean to stop that outro.
No, that's my technical difficulties. Co-hosting. I did not do such politeness. So go to his for the link. And thank you, everybody, so much for being here. And we'll hopefully all see you again soon.